the ice and fire demon god of Hogwarts. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 476, Illusion and Test. In his explanation at the first gathering, Lin En mentioned 5 ways to use the disillusionment charm, including sneaking into the enemy, investigating the enemy camp, stealing intelligence, assassinating the enemy leader, and escaping secretly. The 5 illusion arrays that Lin En made in the House of Requests corresponded to the tests of the abilities of the young wizards who had mastered the disillusionment charm in these 5 application methods. Harry, you go first, Lin En ordered. Harry was able to cast the disillusionment charm silently in the second gathering, and his completion progress was also among the best among all the young wizards. Compared with other young wizards, letting Harry take the lead could serve as a demonstration. Harry agreed, holding his wand, and walked carefully into the first illusion array. After Harry walked into the illusion array, Lin En swung the wand in his hand, and a beam of light shot out, turning into a huge light curtain in the air. The light curtain showed the scene in the illusion, and Harry's every move was exposed to everyone's eyes. At this time, Harry gradually lost his direction in the thick white fog around him. When the white fog in front of Harry disappeared, and the surrounding scene reappeared, he was surprised to find that he appeared outside a street similar to Diagon Alley. However, the entrance of this street was densely packed with wizards dressed as auras. There were about 30 or 40 of these wizards. They looked grim and blocked everyone who wanted to enter this street. Just as Harry was wondering what these auras were doing guarding the entrance of this street, a note fell from the sky and slowly floated past Harry's eyes. Harry subconsciously reached out and grabbed the note, and after he saw the words on the note clearly, he finally understood. Use the disillusionment charm to enter this wizard street. It seems that this illusion tests the infiltration ability of the disillusionment charm. Harry whispered, and he gently tapped his wand on his head. The feeling of cool water flowing through his body came, and Harry's figure gradually became transparent and blended into the surrounding environment. Harry slowly approached the street in trance. He knew that with his magic level, even if he could perform the disillusionment charm silently, his disillusionment charm could only conceal his figure at best. His voice, smell, and even the airflow caused by his movement would not be protected by the disillusionment charm. Therefore, if Harry wanted to use the disillusionment charm to sneak into this street under the guard of these 30 or 40 auras, he had to walk on thin ice and make no noise as much as possible. When Harry approached the street in trance, he almost walked on tiptoe the whole time. When he came to the side of the auras, Harry held his breath to prevent his breathing from being detected by the auras around him. This illusion test can be said to be the simplest one. It tests the most basic use of the disillusionment charm. In other words, as long as the young wizard taking the test is careful enough and does not reveal any flaws, it will be no difficulty to pass this illusion. Harry passed through the middle of these auras and walked into the street smoothly. The illusion around him disappeared the moment Harry walked into the street. Thick white fog filled Harry's vision again, and when the fog disappeared, Harry found himself back in the room of requirement. Is this the illusion array? The illusion in this illusion array is too real, just like the real thing, Harry said to Lin in surprise. Lin just smiled and said nothing. He gestured for Harry to enter the second illusion array. With previous experience, Harry no longer hesitated. He followed Lin's instructions and walked into the range of the second illusion array. With the appearance and disappearance of the white fog, Harry found himself in the central hall of the Ministry of Magic. Not far in front of him was the Fountain of Magic Brothers that he had seen a month and a half ago. However, unlike the central hall of the Ministry of Magic in his memory, the hall at this time was full of auras holding wands and patrolling with serious faces. Not only in the hall, but also in the depths of the passage, the figures of patrolling auras kept flashing by. At this time, another piece of paper fell from the sky and appeared in front of Harry. Harry raised his hand again, grabbed the piece of paper, and read the words on it. Use the disillusionment charm to find out the specific number of auras on this floor. You have 3 chances to answer. After reading this task, Harry understood that, if he was not mistaken, this illusion array should be a test of the young wizard's ability to detect the enemy camp with the disillusionment charm. In fact, rather than saying that the content of these illusions is a test, it is better to say that this is a simulated trial to train oneself. Regardless of whether the young wizards who participated in this test passed or not, their abilities in this area will definitely be significantly improved after a completely simulated training. Harry cast the disillusionment charm on himself without hesitation, and then tiptoed towards the depths of the hall. After arriving next to the Magic Brothers fountain, Harry quickly scanned the wizards around him and counted their number. At this time, in addition to the patrolling auras, there were also Ministry of Magic staff holding briefcases passing by quickly from time to time. However, the expressions on these people's faces were very serious, as if a war had broken out here. 21, 22, 89, 90, 91. Harry quickly counted the number of people here, and after counting the number of people in the hall, he walked towards the depths of the corridor and the direction of the elevator. The content of the task was to find out the number of people on this floor, not just in the hall. Harry naturally would not forget those auras who kept flashing in the depths of the corridor. 109, 110, 111. More than 10 minutes passed, and Harry held his breath and silently counted the number of people he had calculated in his heart. Finally, after he walked through every corner of this floor, he finally breathed a sigh of relief. After confirming that there were no auras around, he whispered his answer, a total of 111 people. As Harry's voice fell, another note fell from the air. However, when Harry grabbed the note and saw the single word on it, a look of astonishment appeared on his face. Error. Harry said in disbelief. Chapter 477, Assassination of Cornelius Fudge. Chapter 477 Assassination of Cornelius Fudge. Why? Harry was puzzled. I clearly counted everyone. However, after Harry finished saying this, he suddenly realized. Harry quickly reached into his pocket and took out the note with the task written on it. As he expected, the note asked him to count the number of auras, not the number of everyone. When Harry was counting the number of people, he also counted the number of Ministry of Magic employees passing by, which led to the wrong answer. If that's the case, then there are 91 auras here. Harry answered confidently. Harry's answer this time was correct. Before he finished speaking, the illusion around him gradually dissipated with the spread of thick white fog, and the scene of the room of requirement appeared in his field of vision again. This time, without Len's reminder, Harry took the initiative to walk into the third illusion array. As the white fog appeared and disappeared, Harry found himself on a floor of the Ministry of Magic. Harry caught the note that fell from the air with ease and whispered the task on the note. Sneak into Cornelius Fudge's office and steal the intelligence materials on the desk. After reading the content of the task, Harry's mouth twitched slightly. Cornelius Fudge's name is out. Lin, you really don't hide it at all, right? Exclamation mark. Harry put away the note and looked forward. In the aisle in front of him, there were more than 10 auras patrolling constantly. Although there were not many auras here, every aura in this aisle was constantly releasing macro detection spells at their feet. The detection range of the general macro detection spell is 3 meters in radius, and the distance between the standing positions of these auras is all within 3 meters. Only when these auras are moving and changing their positions will there be a fleeting distance of more than 3 meters between them. This means that Harry must maintain the same breath holding and concentration as in the first illusion, while these auras are moving, in that short time, which is probably less than a second, and pass through the middle of these auras. After analyzing the difficulty of this task, Harry has not yet started to act, but fine beads of sweat have already appeared on his forehead. Although Harry does not have much confidence in himself, he will not sit and wait for death. He gently taps his wand on his head and covers himself with the disillusionment charm. Harry stands on tiptoe, holds his breath and slowly approaches the auras. Unlike the simple test in the first illusion, which only requires concealing one's own movements to pass, this illusion test is more about the little wizard's control of timing. Harry stared at the 2 auras who kept casting detection spells under his feet. He keenly caught the gap between the 2 auras, one walking forward and the other retreating, and quickly passed through the gap between the 2. With this experience, Harry gradually figured out the movement pattern of these auras. The auras in this illusion are different from the real auras. They are not like real wizards. Even if they follow the rules when they act, there are always deviations. The auras in the illusion are more like robots controlled by artificial intelligence. Each of their movement logic strictly follows a fixed time and route. This made it easy for Harry to find the loopholes in the movement of these auras, and he passed through them and came to the door of Fudge's office. However, the real trouble of this illusion came. Harry couldn't open the door of Fudge's office. Admittedly, Harry could raise his hand and push the door open, but anyone who saw the door of the minister's office opened out of thin air without anyone operating it would probably doubt it! Exclamation mark. Harry's forehead was sweating more and more, and his brain was turning rapidly, thinking about how to solve this problem. In the end, Harry chose a method that was not very clever, but still effective. That is, to use the movement elsewhere, to attract the attention of those auras. Harry took out the note from his pocket, and gently touched the note with his wand, using the silent transfiguration, to transform the note into a stone. Harry threw the stone towards the end of the corridor with all his strength, and the stone drew a parabola in the air, landed on the stairs at the end of the corridor, and rolled down the stairs one by one. The sound of the stone rolling instantly alerted the auras, and they quickly raised their wands, and ran towards the end of the corridor. Taking advantage of the opportunity that the auras all had their backs to him, Harry quickly opened the door of Fudge's office. He noticed a document lying flat on Fudge's desk from the corner of his eye. Information is coming. Harry waved his wand and whispered. The document flew into the air under the traction of magic, and flew into Harry's hands. Harry did not pay much attention to the document. He just saw a few words on the document with his peripheral vision. Rebellion spreads. Ministry of Magic is in danger, and then closed the door of the minister's office. Harry's mission was to steal the information, which meant that he not only needed to get the information, but also to leave safely with it. However, his only exit was blocked by the auras, because of the stone that the note he threw earlier had turned into. There was no other way. Harry could only move as far as possible towards the stairs under the cover of the disillusionment charm, and curl himself up in the corner, motionless. After about 10 minutes, the auras probably let down their guard, walked past Harry, and returned to their original positions. Harry took this opportunity, and rushed to the stairs. When Harry's right foot stepped out, and stepped on the stairs, the illusion finally disappeared, which meant that Harry successfully passed the test. This test is too thrilling. Harry walked out of the illusion, patted his chest, and said with some shock. At this time, the little wizards around all applauded Harry, and they were impressed by Harry's wonderful performance in the illusion. Facing the gazes of these young wizards, Harry felt that his physical and mental fatigue was relieved a lot. He smiled at everyone, and walked into the range of the fourth illusion. Thick white fog swept over, and Harry also appeared in a new illusion. The scene of this illusion was still in the central hall of the Ministry of Magic. In front of the Magic Brothers fountain, Fudge stood there, and in front of him were more than a dozen reporters from various newspapers including the Daily Prophet. Fudge was smiling and saying something to these reporters. Obviously, Fudge was being interviewed by these reporters. Around Fudge, more than 30 auras were holding their wands and guarding the surroundings. They intentionally or unintentionally protected Fudge in the center to prevent Fudge from encountering any accidents. Harry looked at this realistic scene in amazement. He raised his hand and grabbed the note that fell from the air. However, when Harry finished reading the task of this test, he took a breath of cold air. The note read, "Assassinate Cornelius Fudge and get away with it." Chapter 478 Ginny's Happy Spell. It was not just Harry. After seeing the words on the note, the little wizards outside the illusion who were watching the live broadcast on the screen also gasped. Noisy discussion sounded in the room of requests. They did not expect that Lin actually ordered Harry to assassinate the minister of the British Ministry of Magic in the illusion. This is tantamount to assassinating the head of state of the country and setting off a rebellion. Even if this was just a scene in the illusion, it was enough to shock these little wizards. In the illusion, although Harry was shocked for a while by the task on the note, he quickly adjusted his state and put a layer of disillusionment on himself. He successfully lurked behind Fudge. Although these auras were protecting Fudge all the time, their reconnaissance strength was too negligent compared to the previous tests. Harry raised his wand and pointed it at Fudge. But soon, Harry fell into entanglement. He didn't know what spell he should use to attack Fudge. Cutting spell, crushing spell, or explosion spell. Harry was a little embarrassed. He knew how to use these wands, but if he was asked to use this kind of magic on a living person, he couldn't prepare himself mentally. Disarm you. In the end, Harry had no choice but to choose the disarming charm that he was best at, and he shouted loudly. A red light as thick as an adult thumb broke through the air and hit Fudge's back while he was giving a speech, sending him flying and hitting a stone pillar not far away. Fudge's body slowly slid down, and a hint of red appeared at the corner of his mouth. It was obvious that he was seriously injured. The disarming charm, which was originally only able to disarm the enemy's weapons in Harry's hands, could make Fudge feel like he was hit head-on by a train, causing such serious injuries. It can be seen how powerful Harry's disarming charm was. But this was not enough. Even though Fudge was seriously injured, he did not die, which also meant that Harry's mission was not successful. Harry looked at Fudge with a little bit of luck, hoping that if he could seriously injure Fudge, he could also be judged as successfully assassinating Fudge. However, the illusion would not give Harry any chance to exploit. If Harry really killed Fudge with one blow, then the auras would still focus more on their killed Minister of Magic, and would be very anxious to try to save their minister. But now, these auras can see at a glance that their minister Fudge is not in serious trouble, and in order to reduce their guilt as much as possible when Fudge blames them in the future, they will naturally prioritize their goal on catching, or even killing the murderer. All auras, lift all restrictions, and allow unlimited counter-attacks against the criminals. Avada Kedavra, Avada Kedavra, Avada Kedavra. As the auras shouted, dozens of green lights lit up almost at the same time, and completely submerged Harry, who was terrified. The illusion dissipated, and Harry knelt on the ground, his wizard robes completely soaked with sweat. The young wizards who watched the live broadcast fell silent after seeing Harry being drowned by the killing curse. Their bodies and minds were shocked by the green light that devoured life. Harry was completely dazed. After a long while, he stood up with trembling hands and asked with a trembling voice, "I am still alive." At the moment, when he was drowned by dozens of killing curses, Harry really thought he was going to be killed for a moment. He even saw a revolving lantern in front of his eyes. Lin patted Harry on the shoulder and motioned him to return to the young wizards and find a cushion to sit down. "Of course you are not dead. This is just an illusion, although it is a little bit realistic." Harry sat down between Ron and Hermione. He finally recovered. He said unconvincedly, "Lin, this test is impossible to pass, right? Even a disarming spell like that can't accomplish the task." Hearing this, Lin chuckled and shook his head. He asked in return, "You hesitated when choosing magic, right? You should understand that you should choose spells that are powerful enough to kill Fudge in one blow, but you didn't do that, right? The key point of this task is how you can kill Fudge in one blow. As long as you can kill Fudge in one blow, the aura's attention will be more focused on Fudge, and that will be the best time for you to escape from the scene. It's not difficult, isn't it? As for choosing magic for the attack, in fact, the most ideal spell is Avada Kedavra. But I can't let you use the Kedavra here, right? But there are many spells that can kill in one blow, and that you can access. The cutting spell, the shattering spell and the exploding spell. They can all kill a wizard," Lin said. After hearing that the most ideal magic to complete this task was the Avada Kedavra, almost everyone shuddered. "You are teaching us to kill people," Hannah Abbott said with some fear. Lin nodded calmly and said, "I don't deny this, Miss Abbott. If you have to be restrained when facing a life and death enemy, then what can you use to protect your family and yourself? Are you going to use the disarming spell to fight the Death Eater's killing spell?" Lin looked at everyone with a chuckle and asked back. Hearing this, everyone fell silent. Yes, they can't really use the disarming spell to fight those Death Eaters who raise their hands to cast the killing spell, right? Exclamation mark. Even if their disarming spell hits the Death Eaters, at most it will take away the opponent's weapon or repel and injure them. But once the Death Eater's killing spell hits them, then they are really dead, and there is no chance of recovery. Is this fair? This is unfair. Maybe they will not learn the Avada Kedavra curse, nor will they use this extremely evil black magic, but they can use some equally powerful spells to defeat those vicious enemies. Next, I'll do it. Ginny will, I said softly. She ignored the first 3 illusions and walked straight into the 4th illusion that Harry had just failed to pass. In the illusion, looking at Fudge who was giving a fierce speech, Ginny raised her wand and said indifferently without any hesitation, "Tear into pieces." If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 479 Speed Pass Test, Ginny's Reverse Thinking. A grey beam of light burst out of the air, and the extremely powerful crushing curse blew Fudge's body into pieces the moment it hit Fudge's back. Although Ginny was still a 4th year wizard, her magic level was no weaker than most of the senior wizards present. Especially her crushing curse, its power had reached the level of elite auras. The moment Fudge's body was blown up, Ginny quickly waved her wand and cast another disillusionment curse on herself, and then while the auras were focusing on Fudge, whose body had exploded and had not yet reacted, she ran towards the entrance of the Ministry of Magic. Mr. Wheeleye was an employee of the Ministry of Magic, and Ginny had followed Mr. Wheeleye to the Ministry of Magic many times, so she was relatively clear about the location of the entrance and exit of the Ministry of Magic. When Ginny stepped out of the central hall, the illusion around her gradually dissipated. Yes, you acted decisively, and did not miss the best time to escape. I think the first 3 tests should not be difficult for you. Just go to the 5th illusion. Lin smiled and nodded to Ginny, saying so. Ginny smiled and nodded to Lin in response, then stepped into the 5th illusion. Harry was eliminated in the illusion test of the 4th illusion, but this did not mean that he would not have the opportunity to take the test of the 5th illusion next. He could still enter the 5th illusion with the large team in order. In order to pass the 5th illusion smoothly, Harry focused on Ginny's performance in the illusion, projected on the light screen, hoping to learn Ginny's ideas for passing the level. Ginny's performance in the 4th illusion made Harry understand that it is very important to be decisive when waving the wand at the enemy, and it is equally important to seize the opportunity to survive. Harry's failure was that he was not decisive enough and failed to make up his mind at the first time to use extremely lethal and lethal magic on Fudge. If Harry is given another chance, he will surely pass the test of the 4th illusion array. At this time, Ginny has entered the illusion of the 5th illusion array. When the white mist around her dissipated and the surrounding environment entered her field of vision, Ginny lowered her center of gravity cautiously and looked around carefully. Ginny was a little surprised to find that she had never been to the place where she was, but she had a strange sense of familiarity here, as if she had seen something happen here somewhere before. This place looks like a cemetery. She can see tombstones inserted in the soil. It looks gloomy and seems to contain endless murderous intent. Soon, Ginny remembered that this is Little Hangleton Village! The Battle of Little Hangleton Village that took place last school year was widely circulated throughout the British wizarding world, and the famous scene of Lin repelling Voldemort single-handedly published in the Daily Prophet was praised by everyone. In the Daily Prophet, when Lin fought Voldemort alone, wasn't that the scene where she was right now? In Little Hangleton Village, it seemed that the target she was about to face was no longer the auras of the Ministry of Magic, but the truly vicious Death Eaters. Ginny thought so in her heart, and her vigilance was raised to the highest level. At this moment, something strange happened suddenly. Avada Kedavra! Avada Kedavra! Avada Kedavra! More than a dozen shouts came from all directions of Ginny, and more than a dozen Death Eaters with metal masks on their faces had quietly circled around Ginny and trapped her in their encirclement. The sky was filled with dark green light, and the scene that Harry had seen in the 4th illusion test was now reproduced in front of Ginny. Looking at the killing curse coming straight at her, Ginny remained calm. She waved her wand quickly, cast a silent disillusionment charm on herself, and made a bold decision. That was to lie down on the spot and not move. A sky full of green light passed over Ginny's head and exploded on the hills in the distance. When the Death Eaters saw that Ginny suddenly disappeared, they naturally understood that Ginny used the disillusionment charm to hide her figure. They immediately waved their wands and released a large-scale detection spell towards the vicinity. The detection spell released by these Death Eaters was different from the small-scale macro detection spell with a radius of only 3 meters released by the auras in Harry's third illusion test. The blue halo spread from the wands of these Death Eaters and spread to 10 meters away from them. The distance between these Death Eaters and Ginny was not far, and the distance between them was not more than 10 meters, which meant that the detection spell they released could perfectly form a closed circle and completely surround Ginny. If Ginny did not choose to lie down on the spot, but tried to escape the moment she dodged the killing curse, then she might have been discovered by the detection spells of these Death Eaters. After those Death Eaters found that their detection spells had nothing, they did not try to move closer to the middle and compress Ginny's living space. Those Death Eaters seemed to think that Ginny had already used other means to escape from their encirclement before they released the detection spell, and they did not think that Ginny would sit there and wait for death. After all, if an enemy suddenly disappeared in the battle, they would think that the enemy had escaped or ran to a corner to wait for an opportunity, right? Exclamation mark. It is impossible for someone to stand still after becoming invisible, right? Exclamation mark. It was this kind of reverse thinking that allowed Ginny to escape this disaster by chance. When the Death Eaters around her dispersed, the illusion also dissipated. Ginny removed the disillusionment charm on her body and walked out of the illusion. Not bad, not bad. Lin smiled and clapped his hands, motioning Ginny to return to the big team. Then, Lin said to everyone, "You should have seen clearly the demonstration of Harry and Ginny in these 5 illusion arrays. This time, and even the next gathering, the only thing you have to do is to enter these 5 illusion arrays one by one and complete these 5 illusion tests. Do you understand?" Hearing Lin's words, all the little wizards were refreshed. When watching the live broadcast of Harry and Ginny through the light screen released by Lin, these little wizards were eager to try, looking forward to the moment when they entered the illusion test. And now, this moment has finally arrived. Chapter 480. I didn't expect it to be so effective. Lin En and Irina maintained order in the room of requirement, arranging the little wizards to enter the 5 illusion arrays one by one. Lin En waved his left hand, and 4 more light screens appeared on the ceiling of the room of requirement. These 4 light screens, together with the previous light screen, corresponded to the scenes and the illusions of the 5 illusion arrays. After the DA Army's full test officially began, the 5 illusion arrays could be entered and tested at the same time. They did not need to wait for one person to complete the 5 tests one by one before letting the next person in. This undoubtedly made the test much more efficient. The little wizard who was his turn entered the illusion array with his wand in hand, while the little wizards who were still in the queue looked up at the 5 light screens on the ceiling, observing the operations of other little wizards in the illusion. The young wizards who were still in line were surprised to find that the contents of the illusion tests of the 5 illusion arrays were the same, including sneaking into a certain place, counting the number of people, stealing intelligence, assassinating the enemy leader, and escaping from the battlefield. But the scenes where the illusions occurred were quite different. For example, the illusion array that Harry completed at the beginning was a street similar to Diagon Alley. After entering, the illusions generated by other young wizards were not necessarily sneaking into the street similar to Diagon Alley. Some young wizards found themselves in the hall of Hogwarts Castle, and their task was to use the disillusionment charm to sneak from the hall to the underground potion classroom under the guard of dozens of auras. Some young wizards found themselves at the fireplace entrance of the central hall of the Ministry of Magic, and their task was to use the disillusionment charm to sneak through the central hall under the guard of dozens of auras and sneak to the elevator. Some young wizards found themselves in the woods where a large number of auras were stationed and patrolled, and their task was to use the disillusionment charm to cross the forest. In short, the tasks of each young wizard in the first illusion array are similar, but the illusions they are in are all different. They are all randomly generated by the dreaming spell and the dream weaving spell according to the experiences in the young wizard's mind. These scenes may be places these young wizards have been to before. These places may be places they are very familiar with, or they may be places they have only been to once and are still very unfamiliar. Therefore, the difficulty of passing each illusion test is sometimes linked to the luck of these young wizards participating in the test. In the illusion test of the second illusion array, these young wizards are not only in different environments, but also have slightly different objects they need to count. Some people need to count the number of auras, and some people need to count the number of professors in Hogwarts Castle. And more people appeared in a Death Eater base, and were asked to count the number of all Death Eaters in the base. This made some young wizards who still had a fear of the Death Eaters feel weak in their legs when they were undergoing this illusion test. Some even exposed themselves due to excessive fear, resulting in failure to pass the level. The same was true for the illusion test of the third illusion array. Not everyone's task was to steal information from the minister's office. Some people were tasked with sneaking into places such as the Aura's office to steal information. There was even a small number of young wizards whose task was to sneak into a Death Eater stronghold and steal Voldemort's information. And in this process, wild Voldemorts would be randomly refreshed in the illusion. God knows how those young wizards who saw Voldemort appear in front of them ran out of the illusion array crying. The tasks of the illusion test of the fourth illusion array were similar. These young wizards who participated in the illusion test were basically required to assassinate Cornelius Fudge under different circumstances. Of course, among these more than 60 people, there were still 2 extremely unlucky young wizards. Unfortunately, they were given a task of hell level difficulty, which was to assassinate the randomly refreshed Voldemort in a Death Eater stronghold. There is no doubt that the 2 unlucky guys were sent out of the illusion by Voldemort's killing curse. However, assassinating Voldemort was indeed an impossible task, so after the 2 unlucky guys came out of the illusion, Lin En specially arranged an opportunity for them to re-participate in the illusion test. Although the 2 unlucky guys cried and refused to re-participate in the illusion test, they were still ruthlessly dragged in by Lin En. As for the last 5th illusion, it was that every little wizard was equal. Their illusion test was to escape from the encirclement of more than a dozen Death Eaters in the village of Little Hangleton. However, the behavior logic of these Death Eaters seemed to be random. Not every Death Eater would not explore the location where these little wizards disappeared after they released the disillusionment curse on the spot and lay down. Some little wizards released the disillusionment curse on the spot and lay down during the test. However, they were subconsciously bombarded with a killing curse by the Death Eaters who had been fed with the habit of finishing off the enemy when the illusion was constructed, which eventually led to their elimination. After discovering that these Death Eaters did not seem to act according to a fixed behavioral logic, the little wizards who entered the 5th illusion array later also began to seek other ways out. They were pleasantly surprised to find that when they just entered the illusion, they had the opportunity to escape the encirclement before these Death Eaters formed a circle and surrounded them. In this way, they did not need to find ways to escape the encirclement, but only use the disillusionment charm to escape the pursuit of these Death Eaters. After discovering this, the remaining little wizards had a very high pass rate when they were undergoing the illusion test of the 5th illusion array. However, even though Lin En had already fully operated these 5 illusion arrays, the area of the room of requirement was limited after all. No matter what, only 5 little wizards could participate in the illusion test at the same time. Therefore, when the gathering ended, only 2/3 of the young wizards of the DA army had completed the illusion tests in the 5 illusion arrays. Most of the remaining people only participated in the illusion tests of 1 or 2 illusion arrays. At the end of the gathering, these young wizards who had not yet completed the 5 illusion tests all looked back every few steps, unwilling to leave the room of requests. In the end, it was Lin En who persuaded them again and again, and promised that there would still be these 5 illusion arrays here at the gathering next week, and after they were allowed to perform the illusion tests, they reluctantly left. I didn't expect your illusion array to be so popular. After the DA army left, Irina smiled and said to Lin En. Lin En shrugged helplessly and said, I didn't expect it to be so effective. Chapter 481. At least he is making progress. The illusion test generated by the illusion array is indeed true. Even Lin En's teacher, Wallace and Green, almost got lost in the illusion array made by Lin En, let alone these young wizards who have not yet made their way out of the school! Exclamation mark. If the illusions in these 5 illusion arrays would not dissipate on their own after the young wizards pass the test or fail the test, otherwise these young wizards would not be able to escape from this realistic illusion, even if they tried their best. If Lin En did not tell them that this was an illusion, these young wizards would even think that this was reality, and they were teleported to the place where the scene in the illusion was. Under the tempering of this simulated illusion test, these young wizards are equivalent to participating in such an action in real life. Even the young wizards with the weakest magic level have greatly improved their ability to apply the illusion spell. This is why those young wizards who have not yet completed the illusion test of the 5 illusion arrays are unwilling to leave after learning that the gathering is over. The meeting is over, so it's time to test the results of your practice of occlumency. Lin turned around and looked at Harry, Irving, Astoria and the Weirlight twins, and said so. Lin gently waved the wand in his hand and transformed the 5 cushions on the ground into 5 chairs and motioned the 5 people to sit on the chairs. After the 5 people sat down as required, Lin came to Irving. Legitimate mind. Lin pointed the wand in his hand at Irving's forehead and shouted in a low voice. Irving had already started the occlumency when Lin raised the wand, so when Lin's legilimency acted on him, Lin could only peek into a blank space in his mind. Not bad. You can empty your mind and ignore the pull of legilimency on memory. Your occlumency is considered to be initially successful. Lin nodded slightly and said with satisfaction. When Lin En cast legilimency, he did not use full power, but only used a small part of his power to activate legilimency. Otherwise, with his strength as a Demon King level wizard, he could break Iwin's defense with just his powerful magic power. In that case, few people below the Demon King level wizard would be able to resist his legilimency. Generally speaking, there are only 2 ways for an occlumency master to resist the legilimency of a Demon King level wizard. One is to be promoted to a Demon King level wizard and pull himself to the same level as the opponent. The second way is that the occlumency master has reached the level of fabricating false memories in the occlumency technique and become a master of the occlumency technique. In this way, when the Demon King level wizard uses legilimency to detect his false memories, he will mistakenly think that his memories are real memories and stop casting the spell instead of continuing to increase the power of legilimency to forcibly break his defense. Just like Professor Snape, who was undercover in Voldemort's camp in the original book, he used this method to avoid Voldemort's legilimency. Of course, if the demon level wizard is well prepared and determined to investigate him to the end, even at the cost of turning him into a fool, then no one below the demon level wizard can resist the demon level wizard's legilimency. However, the demon level wizard's legilimency, even if it is only operated at a lower power, is not something that ordinary people can resist. Irving can still empty his mind and not recall anything in front of Lin's legilimency, which means that his brain block is already qualified. As for fabricating false memories, it can only rely on Irving to practice by himself and cannot be helped by external forces. After testing Irving's brain block with legilimency, Lin used brain block on the Weirlight twins, Astoria and Harry in turn. The Weirlight twins' occlumency is comparable to Iwin's, and both can keep their minds blank in front of Lin. Astoria is a little weaker. After Lin used legilimency, although she was able to empty her mind at first, she soon couldn't hold on and recalled her past memories under the guidance of legilimency. Among the 5 people, Harry had the weakest occlumency. Under normal circumstances, he might be able to barely empty his mind. But when Lin hit him with legilimency, he couldn't hold on for even a second and recalled his memories under the guidance of legilimency. Why, I'm obviously practicing occlumency every day, but I'm so far behind, Harry said sadly, feeling a little disappointed. Lin didn't blame him, but comforted him. Occlumency relies more on the wizard's own talent, not to mention that you still have Voldemort's soul fragments in your forehead. Maybe Voldemort's soul fragments are interfering with your understanding of occlumency? Hearing Lin's words, Harry fell silent. Lin continued, keep working hard, Harry. Although you didn't resist my legilimency, you at least emptied your mind, didn't you? At least, this is progress, and it proves that your efforts are not in vain, isn't it? Harry finally cheered up. He nodded vigorously and said firmly, well, I will continue to practice. I must be able to resist your legilimency before the gathering next week. Lin patted Harry's shoulder and didn't say much. Instead, he let Harry leave with Irving and Astoria. Voldemort's soul fragments seem to be more active. Perhaps Harry's slow progress in brain blockage is really related to this. After Harry left, Irina came over and said in a worried tone. Lin shook her head and said, "As I said just now, at least he is still making progress, isn't he? Maybe he will learn brain blockage later than others, but as long as he can learn it, our efforts will not be in vain." Irina nodded silently, but there was still some worry in her eyes. Lin En turned around and cast his eyes on Fred and George. Next, it was time for him to help them practice alchemy. Fred and George's talent in alchemy was indeed strong. In just 2 weeks, they had mastered the skill of casting spells without a wand and using their hands to create alchemy arrays on alchemy materials. Not only that, when using the wand to create alchemy arrays, they were able to temporarily imprint alchemy runes in the air. Although the alchemy runes they imprinted in the air would soon dissipate, this level was enough to amaze Lin En. Chapter 482, Fight Against All Dissidents. Yes, as long as you can engrave the alchemical runes in the air and ensure that they will not dissipate in a short time, then you can start practicing using the alchemical array to fight. After checking the progress of Fred and George, Lin nodded with satisfaction and said so. According to Lin's estimation, Fred and George will be able to completely master the alchemical array in the air and apply the alchemical array to the battle in at most half a month. Of course, they can't make multiple alchemical arrays at the same time like Lin, but just making an alchemical array and controlling its semi-automatic combat through thoughts is enough for them to repel the joint attack of several Death Eaters by themselves. As the days passed quickly, the young wizards of the DA army participated in one gathering after another, and their strength continued to improve in the process. In this process, a small episode also occurred in Hogwarts Castle. That is, Umbridge came to the castle with the Education Order number 25 issued by the Ministry of Magic and announced it. The Senior Inquisitor will have the highest authority over all punishments, sanctions, and deprivations of rights involving Hogwarts students in the future, and will have the right to amend such punishments, sanctions, and deprivations of rights made by other teachers. This is the content of the Educational Decree number 25. After this decree was promulgated in Hogwarts Castle, Umbridge's actions became more and more unscrupulous. She began to frantically suppress students whose ideas did not match hers, as well as professors with different political views. Umbridge used frantic corporal punishment and the black magic quill to punish the little wizards who opposed her, and arbitrarily snatched the little wizards who should have been punished from the professors who had different political views from her, and hurt them with more severe punishments. Umbridge's behavior caused dissatisfaction among almost all professors and students in Hogwarts Castle. Only those little wizards whose families had long since surrendered to Voldemort, or who were supporters of Fudge, were willing to cheer for Umbridge. However, even though the professors and young wizards felt extremely disgusted with Umbridge, no matter how much they objected, it would be useless before Dumbledore and Lin, the two demon-level wizards in Hogwarts Castle, spoke. After all, Dumbledore and Lin were the only two forces in Hogwarts Castle that could compete with the Ministry of Magic. During this period, it was not that no one was indirectly hoping that Lin would express her position, drive Umbridge away, and return Hogwarts Castle to a clear and bright world. But Lin used the DA army as an excuse, intending to cultivate the young wizard's sense of independence and resistance instead of the plan of taking action by herself. As for Dumbledore, in order to make the plan of Lin and Irina go smoothly, as long as Umbridge did not do anything too extreme, he would pretend to be dead in the principal's office, neither expressing his position, nor taking any action. The time came to the last DA army gathering before Christmas, and all the young wizards appeared in the room of requirement with heavy faces. Umbridge's policy of cracking down on all dissidents in Hogwarts Castle made these young wizards feel like they were carrying a mountain on their backs, and they felt extremely tired. The only thing that could cheer them up was perhaps the weekly gathering that could significantly improve their magic level and combat capabilities. In the gatherings of these few months, in addition to learning the disillusionment charm from Lin, Irina also spent more than a month teaching them the Patronus charm. Now, with the help of Lin and Irina, most of these young wizards can condense a physical Patronus. Among the more than 60 people in the room of requirement, 59 were able to condense a physical Patronus, and although the remaining few could not condense their Patronus charm into a physical entity, the thick silver-white mist was enough to drive away less than 5 Dementors. Of course, in these few months, It is impossible for these young wizards to have only learned the disillusionment charm and the patronus charm. In the simulated illusion test set up by Lin En using the illusion array, these young wizards were able to gradually master some other magic that was originally very unfamiliar. In addition, when these young wizards were confused about a certain magic and asked questions to Lin En and Irina patiently answered them, and these young wizards made progress in their understanding of many spells. Not only that, Lin En also taught everyone basic offensive spells in 2 gatherings, including the disarming spell, the coma spell, the crushing spell, the cutting spell and the explosion spell. And Irina taught everyone common defensive spells in these 2 gatherings, including the armor spell, the universal protection spell and the peace guarding spell. Under the simulation of the illusion array, when these young wizards learned these spells, they were not just talking about them on paper, but they were able to apply them in actual combat through repeated training in the illusion test, and even achieved some unexpected results. It is no exaggeration to say that 80% to 90% of the young wizards in the DAME have reached the magic level of ordinary auras. There are even more than 10 people who can rival the elite auras in terms of magic level. Everyone. Lin En looked at the people in the room of every request and said lightly, after these few months of gatherings, I believe everyone has a better understanding of magic, and everyone's combat effectiveness has also made a qualitative leap. Hearing Lin En's words, everyone nodded silently, and many young wizards even echoed him. Lin En pressed down his hands to quiet everyone down. Then, Lin En said in a deep voice, since everyone has mastered those basic things, then today, I plan to teach you a very powerful magic, but it is a black magic. As Lin En's voice fell, a whisper of discussion sounded. Black magic, is it really suitable for them to learn? Exclamation mark. However, before learning this dark magic, I hope you can promise me that you can only use it on Death Eaters and some extremely vicious dark wizards. As for other wizards, even if they are auras who intend to arrest you, even if they are that pink-toed Umbridge, you must never use it on those people. Lin said seriously. Chapter 483, Teaching the Divine Sword. Lin was going to teach everyone the sharpshooter charm invented by Professor Snape. But the power of this spell was too strong, and only Professor Snape knew the counter curse of sharpshooter. Therefore, Lin would not allow these young wizards to use sharpshooter charm on others before they were sure that the enemy was a real mortal enemy. Although the current Ministry of Magic and the auras in the Aura Office had different positions from them, those auras were innocent, and they were just following orders. Lin did not care whether those Death Eaters would be left with lifelong disabilities or death. But he did not want the auras who should have stood with them to lose their lives and health because of the incompetence of the Ministry of Magic's top brass. I want you to swear, I promise not to cast the spell I am about to learn on anyone other than Death Eaters and vicious dark wizards, Lin said seriously. When he raised his wand, a golden halo appeared in front of everyone. I will cast a contract magic, and every word you say next will be recorded in the contract magic. The golden halo flickered and shone in front of everyone. These little wizards were surprised to find that every time they spoke, their words would turn into golden runes, appear on the golden halo, and rotate continuously in the air. Presumably that was what Lin said, the words they were recorded on the contract magic. As a Demon King level wizard, Lin's every spell could be transformed into substance with the support of powerful magic, and this contract magic was no exception. This is why he was able to cast the contract magic, even though he did not use any carrier to draw the magic contract, and even made the contract magic that should not be effective in the form of a verbal contract. After hearing what Lin said, all the young wizards hesitated for a while, but soon, they all made the same choice, which was to learn this black magic. After a few months of getting along, these young wizards knew that Lin and Irina were completely good for them. Maybe Lin and Irina wanted to win them over and let them join their camp in the future, but Lin and Irina never thought of using them to achieve their own selfish interests. Whether it was to resist the high-pressure rule of the Ministry of Magic or to fight against Voldemort and the Death Eaters, it was all for the magic world to enjoy better peace. I swear that I will not use the magic I'm about to learn on anyone other than the Death Eaters and the vicious black wizards. Ginny took the lead and said seriously. After Ginny opened the door for everyone came forward and completed their oaths seriously. Every word they said was engraved on the golden halo. After more than 60 people completed their oaths, The originally pure golden halo was now covered with strange patterns. It looked like it was made up of dense golden symbols. After the golden halo had recorded everyone's oaths, Lin En waved his wand and gathered the golden halo. He looked at everyone and said calmly, "I have noted down your oaths, and I hope you can stick to your promises. If you use this magic on innocent people, then my contract magic will immediately deprive you of all your memories of today and erase all related memories of this magic in your mind. This black magic is called Shadowless Divine Sharpness, and so far, only one person knows its counterspell. But unfortunately, that person is not me, and I cannot teach you the counterspell of this black magic. That's why I don't allow you to use this black magic on innocent people, because it will be irreversible damage. The effect of Shadowless Divine Sharpness is similar to the cutting spell, but its concealment is more powerful than the cutting spell. After you recite the spell of Shadowless Divine Sharpness, your wand will shoot out a sharp blade composed of cursed power without any entity. This invisible cursed blade will cut towards where you aim, causing tremendous damage. The parts cut by the Shadowless Divine Blade cannot regenerate. Only its counterspell can heal the wound caused by the Shadowless Divine Blade. But as I said before, none of us understand its counterspell. Next, you will practice the Shadowless Divine Blade in batches on the alchemical targets in the Room of Requirement. After you learn it, unless you encounter Death Eaters or Dark Wizards, please keep it to yourself. Lin En said to everyone seriously. Lin En taught the Shadowless Divine Blade to these young wizards, and more importantly, he hoped that they could have a trump card to save their lives. Lin En told everyone the spell and casting techniques of the Shadowless Divine Blade, and then pulled out a dozen alchemical targets in the Room of Requirement, and asked these young wizards to practice in groups. In fact, the Shadowless Divine Blade is not as simple as imagined. Even among the dark magic, it is the most difficult one to learn. At the end of the gathering, among all the young wizards present, only Irina, Astoria, Ginny, Fred, George, Hermione and Harry successfully released the sharp spell on the alchemical target. The others seemed to be very regretful. Due to the danger of the sharp spell, they could not practice the sharp spell privately. Unless a Death Eater or a vicious dark wizard broke into Hogwarts Castle and wanted to attack them, their only chance to practice the sharp spell was at the weekly gathering. But that was impossible. With Dumbledore and Lin, two demon-level wizards, here, even Voldemort did not dare to break into Hogwarts Castle by himself, let alone those inferior dark wizards! Exclamation mark. What's more, with Dumbledore, the headmaster who holds most of the special powers of Hogwarts Castle, even if a dark wizard sneaked into Hogwarts Castle, he would be nowhere to hide, and they would not have any chance to attack the young wizards. After the meeting, Lin taught Harry and the others how to practice occlumency, and also taught Fred and George how to practice alchemy. Fred and George's alchemy skills were beyond description. With their alchemy talents, they had been able to practice alchemy more than a month ago, and created an alchemy array around them for combat. Chapter 484 Harry's Abnormality, Dreams and the Attack of the Giant Snake. They even began to try to refine two alchemy arrays with different main attributes at the same time, to assist in the battle. In short, Lin was very confident in Fred and George's alchemy. His guidance to the two after each meeting was just to give some pointers on research ideas. In the field of brain occlumency, everyone's practice was also very effective. In these months of practice, everyone except Harry has been able to empty their brain skillfully. Even if Lin increased the power of legilimency, as long as he did not increase the output power of legilimency to the strength of the Demon King, they would not be affected by legilimency and still close their brains, leaving their minds blank. As for Harry, his progress in brain occlumency was still very worrying. Although Harry's brain occlumency has also improved to a certain extent after these months of hard practice, this improvement is only on Lin's legilimency, from less than 1 second to 30 seconds. This seems to have improved a lot, but it is actually useless. After all, Lin was able to break Harry's occlumency in 30 seconds with low power legilimency. So when Harry was in a dream and his brain was defenseless, it would be easy for Voldemort's Horcrux to invade Harry's brain. Lin and Irina's worries were not without reason. On that night, something unusual happened to Harry. Originally, Harry was lying on the soft bed in the Gryffindor dormitory, enjoying a sweet dream. He dreamed that he, Ron, and Hermione were happily strolling around Hogsmeade and drinking butterbeer in the Three Broomsticks. But he didn't know when his dream began to change. His body became soft, strong, and flexible, sliding between the shiny metal fences and on the dark, cold stones. He slid on his belly, close to the ground. The light in his field of vision was very dim, but he could see the light of the objects around him, and some strange bright colors. He turned his head, and at a glance, he found that the corridor was empty. No. He saw a person sitting on the ground with his head hanging on his chest, and the outline of the person flickered in the dimness. He stuck out his tongue. He tasted the man's scent. The man was alive, but dozing, sitting in front of the door at the end of the corridor. For some reason, he began to desire to bite the man, but he had to suppress the urge, because he seemed to have something more important to do. But then, the man woke up. The man jumped up, a silver cloak slipped from his legs, and he saw the bright, blurry outline of the man standing in front of him, a wand pulled out of his belt. He had no choice. He stood up and attacked the man. He attacked once, twice, 3 times, sinking his fangs deep into the man's skin. He felt ribs shattered between his teeth, and hot blood rushed into his mouth. He heard the man scream in pain, and then he was silent, collapsed in the corner, blood splattered on the ground. His forehead hurt so much, it seemed like it was going to explode. Harry. Fortunately, just when he felt the pain was unbearable, he was awakened. Ron stood in front of the bed, looking terrified. He kept calling out to Harry on the bed. Harry opened his eyes. He was soaked in cold sweat. His bedsheet was wrapped around him like a tights. He felt as if a hot pair of tongs had been inserted into his forehead. The intense pain made Harry's eyes go black. He rolled to the edge of the bed and vomited on the ground. But soon, Harry took a deep breath and sat up straight on the bed. He ordered himself not to vomit. He knew he had to tell Ron what happened in the dream. "Your dad," Harry said breathlessly. He was sweating profusely. "Your dad, something happened." Ron was stunned. He didn't understand. "What?" Harry said with difficulty. "Your dad. He was bitten, very badly, and there was blood everywhere. I saw this through." Harry noticed that there were several other roommates behind Ron, so he said it cryptically. "Through seeing." Ron's face quickly turned horrified. Obviously, he understood what Harry meant. That is, Harry saw his father being attacked through the fragments of Voldemort's soul in his mind. "Harry is really sick. I'll go call someone." At this time, Neville also said in horror. He realized that something was wrong with Harry. He quickly ran out of the dormitory and headed towards Professor McGonagall's office. Harry was still struggling to say to Ron, "We must find where he is. He is bleeding." "I am. It's a big snake." Ron nodded vigorously. After seeing the direction Neville left, he realized that Neville was going to find Professor McGonagall. So, Ron did not take Harry to find Professor McGonagall, but ran out of the dormitory and came to the common room. He stood at the door of the girls' dormitory and called Irina's name loudly. Irina slept very soundly, but fortunately Hermione's sleep was not deep. After hearing Ron's loud shouting, she immediately pushed Irina up and stopped calling before the other little witches of Gryffindor were woken up. What happened? Irina was still in her pajamas. She only had time to tidy up her snow white hair on the way here. Ron waved his wand and released the occlusion charm, which he had already mastered. Then he told Irina and Hermione that Harry was invaded by Voldemort's soul fragments in his dream and saw some special scenes. Hearing this, Irina and Hermione immediately knew the seriousness of the matter. Irina was a little annoyed. She thought that, after practicing for a few months, Harry's brain blockage had improved, and Harry was immune to the influence of Horcruxes. But in fact, they seemed to be a little too optimistic. What Harry witnessed in his dream was exactly the same as in the original book, which meant that the brain blockage he practiced these days had almost no effect. Unless Harry could subconsciously maintain the operation of brain blockage in his dreams while sleeping, it would be difficult for him to avoid the influence of Horcruxes. However, Irina did not dwell on this matter for too long. She understood that the most urgent task now was not to consider how to block the influence of the Horcrux on Harry, but to immediately rescue Mr. Weasley, who was still in the Department of Mysteries and in danger of his life. Chapter 485 Finding someone to take the blame is also a hassle. Tell Lin what's going on here, he'll know what to do. Ron, I'll save Mr. Weasley. Irina threw a two-way mirror to Ron. She pulled out her wand from her waist and walked towards a relatively empty area in the middle of the Gryffindor common room. Ron subconsciously caught the two-way mirror thrown by Irina. He looked at her blankly. Irina took out a random door key from her pocket, and with a flash of white light, she disappeared with her wand in her hand. Watching Irina leave with the random door key, Hermione pushed Ron hard and said anxiously, "Contact Senior Owl quickly, do as Irina said." Ron came to his senses. His father's life was at stake, so he dared not neglect it at all. Ron quickly injected magic power into the two-way mirror, and soon, Lin's face appeared in the two-way mirror. Hermione came over, and together with Ron, they told Lin what happened to Harry, and how Irina went to rescue Mr. Weasley alone through the any port key. I see. In the Slytherin dormitory, after Lin heard the whole story, he nodded gently, and cut off the connection of the two-way mirror. After the connection of the two-way mirror was cut off, Lin's expression suddenly became solemn. He drew out his wand, and walked out of the dormitory without any hesitation. After walking out of the Slytherin dormitory, and coming to the Slytherin common room, Lin walked outside, while waving his wand and whispered, "Expecto Patronus." A silver-white snow wolf appeared beside Lin. Under Lin's control, the silver-white snow wolf was about the same size as an ordinary wolf, but the essence of the Patronus allowed it to ignore the terrain, and fly at will. "Go, find Professor Dumbledore," Lin said softly. After he finished speaking, the snow wolf jumped out, passed through the wall of the Slytherin common room, and headed for the headmaster's office on the 8th floor. After the Patronus snow wolf left, Lin En did not stop his steps. He still held his wand tightly and kept moving forward. The direction he was moving in seemed to be the defense against the dark arts professor's office. On the other side, in the headmaster's office, the phoenix Fawkes standing on the shelf seemed to have sensed something, and it chirped softly. "Fawkes." Dumbledore woke up. He slightly adjusted his collar and hat, and then looked at Fawkes in confusion. Before Fawkes could respond to Dumbledore, the silver-white snow wolf penetrated the wall of the headmaster's office and appeared in front of Dumbledore. Seeing the snow wolf, Dumbledore naturally recognized that it was Lin's Patronus. He adjusted his glasses and asked, "What happened, Lin?" Dumbledore knew that in normal times, even if something important happened, Lin and Irina would not mind coming to the principal's office to visit him. But now that Lin himself did not come, but used the secret method of the Order of the Phoenix to let his Patronus come to him, the situation must be very urgent. Lin's faint voice came from the mouth of the snow wolf. Voldemort's Horcrux affected Harry's brain. Harry seemed to see the perspective of another Horcrux through the connection between the Horcruxes. It was a big snake, and that big snake attacked Mr. Weasley. Another Horcrux? A big snake? Dumbledore asked, as if he had thought of something. Snow Wolf nodded slightly, confirming Dumbledore's guess. Lin's voice continued, "Yes, Professor Dumbledore, Voldemort has made a new Horcrux, and the carrier of the new Horcrux may be a living creature, that is, the big snake that Harry mentioned." Harry connected to the perspective of the big snake as a Horcrux in his dream, and saw that the big snake attacked Mr. Weasley. "I think Mr. Weasley is probably dying. Irina has gone to the Department of Mysteries of the Ministry of Magic through the any portal key to rescue Mr. Weasley. She will send Mr. Weasley to St. Mungo's Hospital for magical maladies and injuries," Snow Wolf said in a deep voice. Even though Irina did not tell Lin what she would do after rescuing Mr. Weasley, the tacit understanding cultivated over the years made Lin sure that she would send Mr. Weasley to St. Mungo's Hospital for magical maladies and injuries for treatment faster according to the trajectory of the original book. Dumbledore nodded and said, "I understand. I think I need to let the Weasley children know about this. They have the right to visit their father." Snow Wolf said, "If I guess correctly, Professor McGonagall will bring Harry and Ron to see you soon, and you can also ask Professor McGonagall to call Fred, George and Ginny. In addition, you don't need to worry that Umbridge will interfere after finding out that they are not in bed. I'm dealing with this matter now." Dumbledore nodded again, but soon he said worriedly, "Lin, don't go too far this time." Hearing this, Snow Wolf grinned and said, "Don't worry, Professor Dumbledore, I know my limits. After all, even if I go to Lefuel Alley in France to find someone to take the blame, it will be a troublesome thing. As soon as Snow Wolf finished speaking, he turned into dots of silver white light and dissipated in the air. At this time, Lin had come to the corridor where the defense against the dark arts professor's office was located. Just as he was about to walk to the door of the defense against the dark arts professor's office, he suddenly saw a little wizard wearing the Gryffindor emblem on his chest, walking out of the defense against the dark arts professor's office. The little wizard seemed to have a triumphant smile on his face. Seeing this scene, Lin lowered his eyes slightly. It seemed that even Gryffindor College never lacks so-called traitors. As soon as he thought about it, the silent disillusionment charm wrapped his body inside. The little Gryffindor wizard brushed past him, but he didn't realize that there was another person standing next to him. After the little Gryffindor wizard left, Lin removed his disillusionment charm and came to the door of the defense against the dark arts professor's office without any concealment. He kicked open the newly reinforced wooden door of the defense against the dark arts professor's office with a careless kick, pointed his wand at Umbridge, who was about to leave here and go to the Gryffindor dormitory to arrest someone, and whispered, "Oblivion. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels." Chapter 486. He is clearly awake. Umbridge was hit by the white light with a look of astonishment. She couldn't understand why someone dared to kick open her door so boldly and attack her so decisively. Lin walked into the office slowly. He waved his wand and used the floating spell to move Umbridge, who was in a coma and was under the forgetfulness spell, to her chair, creating the illusion that she fell asleep at her desk. This time, Lin only deleted Umbridge's memory of that night. Therefore, when Umbridge woke up, it was difficult for her to notice that her memory had been deleted. She was more likely to think that she was tired and fell asleep on the table. After putting Umbridge down, Lin left the office. Before leaving, he did not forget to use the repair spell to repair the door that he kicked open with a magical kick. After doing all this, Lin put the wand back into his waist. He yawned and went in the direction of the Slytherin dormitory. Nagini, who had completely transformed into a giant snake and became Voldemort's Horcrux, would retreat after attacking Mr. Weasley, so he was not worried about any danger that Irina would encounter on this trip. Moreover, as long as Voldemort himself did not take action with Irina's magic level, even if there were more Death Eaters, it would be in vain. At the same time, in the Ministry of Magic, the Department of Mysteries, Mr. Weasley leaned against the wall weakly, and Irina squatted beside him, using healing spells to slow down his injuries and stop his bleeding. Mr. Weasley's injuries were very serious, so serious that, if Irina ignored his injuries and carried him directly to St. Mungo's Hospital for Magical Maladies and Injuries using the Anywhere portkey, then Mr. Weasley would most likely die on the way of the Anywhere portkey's space travel. Therefore, before sending Mr. Weasley to St. Mungo's Hospital for Magical Maladies and Injuries, Irina had to at least stop Mr. Weasley's bleeding to ensure that his injuries would not worsen. "It's okay, Irina, thank you," Mr. Weasley said weakly. Irina stopped casting the spell. She saw that the small wounds on Mr. Weasley's body had scabbed over, and the blood oozing from the fatal wounds began to decrease. Irina carefully helped Mr. Weasley up, and then took out a random door key. In the flash of white light, the two appeared at St. Mungo's Hospital for Magical Injuries and Maladies. "Please receive the patient," Irina said loudly. Several healers hurriedly ran here not far away, but they seemed to be accustomed to the patients who needed emergency treatment from time to time. At this time, in Dumbledore's office, Harry and Ron sat on both sides of the desk with Dumbledore. Dumbledore did not look at Harry, or rather, his eyes were deliberately avoiding Harry. Not long after, Professor McGonagall led Fred, George and Ginny in. The hair of the three Weasley children still looked messy. After they learned that their father might be in trouble, they didn't even have time to change their pajamas. "Harry, what's going on?" Ginny asked fearfully. "Professor McGonagall said that you saw your father injured." Before Harry could answer, Dumbledore said in a deep voice, "Your father was injured while working for the Order of the Phoenix. He has been sent to St. Mungo's Hospital for Magical Maladies and Injuries by Irina." I will send you back to Sirius's residence, which is more convenient to the hospital than the burrow. There, you will see your mother." As Dumbledore spoke, he pointed to the innocent looking old teapot on the table. After seeing this old teapot, everyone realized that it was a portkey. After seeing Irina's portkeys many times, when they saw these ordinary portkeys, everyone's hearts were not the slightest bit disturbed. The Flu Powder Network is under surveillance by the Ministry of Magic. I can only send you back with the portkey. Lin has gone to stop Professor Umbridge. She won't find out that you are not in bed at night. Go, quickly, before anyone comes. Dumbledore said so, and he asked everyone to gather around and put their hands on the teapot. When the portkey was about to be triggered, Harry subconsciously looked up and finally saw Dumbledore's blue eyes. They were very close, and Dumbledore's clear eyes moved from the portkey to Harry's face. But at this moment, Harry's scar began to burn again, as if his wound had opened again. At the same time, Harry inexplicably arose a strong hatred in his heart. This hatred had no reason, but it was so strong that it was terrible. At this moment, the only thought in Harry's mind was to attack. He wanted to bite and pierce his teeth into the body of the person in front of him. Fortunately, before Harry could take action, the white light on the portkey took him away from the principal's office. Dumbledore obviously noticed the abnormality in Harry's eyes. He looked at the place where Harry left thoughtfully and seemed to have some guesses in his mind. At this moment, another white light lit up, and Irina appeared in the principal's office. "I sent Mr. Weasley to St. Mungo's Hospital for magical maladies and injuries. They placed Mr. Weasley in a ward for treatment. However, before sending Mr. Weasley to St. Mungo's Hospital for magical maladies and injuries, I took some measures to stop the bleeding for Mr. Weasley. He should be out of danger," Irina said. Dumbledore nodded slightly and said earnestly, "Thank you, Irina." Irina shook her head gently and said, "This is what I should do. Regardless of the fact that we should fight side by side from beginning to end, I have no choice but to do it, just because Mr. Weasley is Ron's father." Dumbledore sighed. "Ron and his friends are lucky to have a friend like you." Irina scratched her head a little embarrassedly and asked, "Did anything happen that I need to pay attention to in the more than half an hour I was away?" Dumbledore hesitated for a moment and told her about the abnormality in Harry's eyes before he was teleported away by the portkey. After listening to Dumbledore's narration, Irina's expression became solemn again. She said with some annoyance, "Damn, I feel that Harry's brain occlusion technique is completely ineffective. If it is in a dream, it's fine. After all, most people are always defenseless in their dreams." But Harry was clearly awake just now. Chapter 487 The Reason for Laughing. Dumbledore thought for a moment and said, "Perhaps Harry didn't perform occlumency all the time. Masters of occlumency like us are used to maintaining the state of occlumency at all times during normal days, so that the brain is filled with false memories. But that is a very advanced technique that allows a master of occlumency to fabricate false memories without affecting his own brain thinking. And for a beginner like Harry, it is difficult to maintain the state of occlumency all the time, unless he deliberately maintains it." Dumbledore said so. Irina said helplessly, "According to what you said, it is indeed unrealistic to let Harry maintain the state of occlumency all the time. Not only because it will affect Harry's own thinking, but also because it is too tiring, and Harry's body will definitely not be able to bear it. Today, Harry can't even last for a minute under Lin's legilimency, let alone learn the special technique that Dumbledore said, which is to maintain the state of occlumency and still think normally. This means that Harry can't stop the Horcrux in his head from projecting images or consciousness into his mind." Irina said, "I think we may have been thinking in the wrong direction from the beginning. Harry has Voldemort's Horcrux in his head, which means that his head has already established a certain connection with Voldemort. It is difficult for us to prevent the Horcrux from projecting images and consciousness into Harry's mind. Therefore, as long as Harry can ignore the images projected into his mind and resist the invasion of Voldemort's consciousness, then for now, Harry's brain blockage can be considered to be effective." Irina said so. Just like when Harry saw Dumbledore's eyes just now, the hatred in his heart and the desire to attack Dumbledore, if Harry hadn't been taken away by the portkey, Harry would probably have taken action. And what they have to do is not to prevent this feeling from appearing in Harry's heart, but to let Harry use brain blockage to close his brain. As soon as this feeling appears, resist the desire to attack Dumbledore and prevent Voldemort's consciousness from controlling Harry's behavior. Dumbledore nodded slightly, then asked, "Are you going to meet Harry and the others at 12 Grimmauld Place?" Irina shook her head and said, "No, judging from Mr. Weasley's injuries, Harry and the others will have to wait until tomorrow to visit Mr. Weasley. I will go to St. Mungo's Hospital for Magical Maladies and Injuries with Lin tomorrow to visit him." Dumbledore didn't say much. Irina, who knew how to make any portkey, could reach a certain place faster than anyone else in a short time. When wizards use apparition to travel through space, there is still the limitation that the destination may be cast with an anti-apparition spell, but the portkey can ignore most magic like the anti-apparition spell and appear anywhere at will. Lin and Irina were originally unable to use the portkey to teleport in Hogwarts Castle, but after getting the permission of Dumbledore, the headmaster who has the authority of Hogwarts Castle, the protective magic at Hogwarts Castle would not prevent the two from traveling through space. Being woken up in the middle of the night and having such an emergency, Irina, Harry and the others felt exhausted physically and mentally after Mr. Weasley was safely sent to St. Mungo's Hospital for Magical Maladies and Injuries. Therefore, they all slept for the whole morning and did not wake up until lunchtime. Lin and Irina had a simple lunch, and after learning that Harry and the others had not yet set out for St. Mungo's Hospital for Magical Maladies and Injuries, they did not teleport directly to St. Mungo's Hospital for Magical Maladies and Injuries, but came to the outside of number 12 Grimmauld Place. As soon as they arrived outside number 12 Grimmauld Place, they saw Harry and the others coming out of the black ancestral house and were about to go to St. Mungo's Hospital for Magical Maladies and Injuries. It seemed that they came in a clever way. "Mr. Moody, Ms. Tonks, good afternoon." Lin and Irina nodded slightly to Moody and Tonks, who were also members of the Order of the Phoenix and were responsible for leading Harry and the others. At this time, Moody, Tonks, and Harry all changed into ordinary people's clothes. Number 12 Grimmauld Place was not too far from St. Mungo's Hospital for Magical Maladies and Injuries, so they chose the Muggle way of travel and planned to take the subway to St. Mungo's Hospital for Magical Maladies and Injuries. "Good afternoon, Lin and Irina. Thanks to you, otherwise Arthur would be in danger." Moody nodded to the two and said in a deep voice. The group chatted while getting on the subway. Not long after, they arrived in the city center. The conflict between the British wizarding world and ordinary people is not as serious as that in the American wizarding world. Even the largest hospital for magic injuries and diseases in the British wizarding world is located in the center of London. The group came to the street, which looked very wide. The shops on both sides were crowded with customers traveling during Christmas. It's not easy to find a good address to build a hospital. There is not enough land in Diagon Alley, and they can't build it underground like the Ministry of Magic, which is not very hygienic. In the end, they got a place here, on the grounds, that patients can come and go among the crowd. Moody introduced to everyone in a low voice. But the reason he gave for the location of St. Mungo's Hospital for Magical Maladies and Injuries was somewhat ridiculous. Patients could come and go among the crowd? Isn't that just hilarious? Exclamation mark. Look at what the patients at St. Mungo's Hospital for Magical Maladies and Injuries look like. Wizards with elephant trunks or an extra hand growing out of their chests. Witches with sharp whistles and steam coming out of their mouths. And weirdos with heads that ding like clocks. Exclamation mark. If there were patients who were injured by magic, that would be fine. But there are many strange things about transfiguration, and those patients who were transfiguration look like all kinds of people. If they can blend into the crowd without being discovered, that would be really ridiculous. At this time, in front of everyone was an old-fashioned red brick department store called Tao Tao Co. Limited. The store looked dilapidated and deserted, with only a few broken mannequins in the window, wearing crooked wigs, in different postures, and wearing clothes that were at least 10 years old. There were big signs on the dusty doors saying closed for renovation. "Here, are you ready?" Tonks waved and led them to a display window. In the window was a particularly ugly female mannequin, whose false eyelashes were about to fall off, and who was wearing a green nylon skirt. Chapter 488. They are my children after all. Everyone nodded and moved closer to her. Tonks moved closer to the window, looked up at the ugly mannequin, and her breath blurred the glass. Hello. Let's see Arthur Wearlie. Shortly after Tonks finished speaking, the mannequin actually nodded slightly and waved its connected fingers. As the mannequin made movements, Irina also felt a spatial force forming on the window, and it kept moving in a specific pattern. She knew that this was the spatial channel connecting the window to St. Mungo's Hospital for Magical Maladies and Injuries that was opened, just like the flu network connected to the fireplaces in wizards' homes. A group of people passed through this ugly window one after another. So many people just blended into the air, but were not discovered by the people coming and going on the street. After passing through the window, everyone came to a crowded room like a waiting room, with rows of wizards sitting on wooden chairs on both sides, waiting to be treated. In addition to these patients, there were also male and female wizards in green robes walking around among them, asking about their conditions, and taking notes on a writing board. The green robes on these wizards were obviously some kind of uniforms, and there was a badge embroidered on their chests, which was a cross made of a wand and bones. They are the healers of St. Mungo's Hospital for Magical Maladies and Injuries. When I sent Mr. Wearlie here, they took him for treatment. Looking at Harry and others who were still a little puzzled, Irina introduced them to them. At this time, Mrs. Wearlie also came over from not far away, and she led everyone to the ward, where Mr. Wearlie was. Everyone followed her through a double door, and walked through a narrow corridor. On the walls on both sides of the corridor were portraits of famous healers, and crystal bubbles with candles floated on the ceiling, looking like huge soap bubbles. Healers in green robes came in and out of the doors of each ward in this corridor. A yellow stench floated out of one door, and faint wailing could be heard from time to time. Mr. Wearlie was admitted to the ward of the biological injury department. After arriving at the biological injury department, everyone quickly found where Mr. Wearlie was. Mr. Wearlie's ward was in the second door on the right. The word danger was written on the door, as well as the name of the ward, De Llewellyn Ward. The intensive care units of St. Mungo's Hospital for Magical Maladies and Injuries were all named after famous healers in the past, and De Llewellyn was one of these famous healers. The cause of Mr. Wearlie's injury was marked on the door as severe bite, and underneath it was a copper-framed card with handwritten words on it. Main healer, Hippocrates Smethwick. Trainee healer, Augustus Pye. Mrs. Wearlie looked at everyone and said, Arthur can't see too many people at a time. Who of you will go in first? Mr. Wearlie's injury was not as serious as in the original book under Irina's treatment, so Mrs. Wearlie had visited him before the group came here. Tonks smiled and said, Lin, Irina, I think you should go in first. After all, you have done a great job in saving him in time. Oh, and you, Harry, you too. Hearing this, Lin and Irina had no objection, but Harry shrank back with some resistance. Whether it was the scene he saw in the dream or the sudden hatred for Dumbledore, before being teleported away by the portkey, Harry realized that he was being controlled by Voldemort's soul fragments. Therefore, Harry was worried that, after meeting Mr. Wearlie, he would suddenly be controlled by Voldemort and do something to Mr. Wearlie that he would never forgive. Seeing that Harry didn't want to see Mr. Wearlie, Lin didn't force him. He casually said, since Harry doesn't want to go in, forget it. Anyway, they can meet at Christmas. Let Fred and George go in with us. Hearing Lin's words, Fred and George were both happy, and the two quickly followed Lin's steps. The four walked into the ward and closed the door. Block your ears. Without Lin's reminder, Fred raised his hand and released an ear blocking spell, covering the area. Hello, Lin, Irina. Mr. Wearlie look much better than yesterday. Thank you for coming to see me. Lin and Irina also greeted Mr. Wearlie, while Fred and George surrounded Mr. Wearlie's bedside and looked at him worriedly. Lin came forward and asked directly, Mr. Wearlie, when you were attacked by the snake yesterday, did you find anything wrong with it? Not right. Mr. Wearlie frowned, thinking hard, and said, maybe, I feel that it seems to be more than just a snake. It gives me a weird feeling. Lin said lightly, that snake is actually one of Voldemort's Horcruxes, and it is Voldemort's latest Horcrux with a living creature as the carrier. When Mr. Wearlie heard Lin mention the word Horcrux, his expression changed. He looked to his side nervously, looking at his children Fred and George. But to Mr. Wearlie's surprise, Fred and George's expressions did not change much after hearing the word Horcrux. Noticing Mr. Weasley's actions, Lin explained, I have told them about Horcruxes. They are very talented, Mr. Weasley. I think they will be great comrades in our future. Hearing Lin's words, Mr. Weasley was silent. After a long while, he said in a low voice, well, I understand that there will always be such a day, but they are my children after all. I will always worry about letting them get involved in these things. Hearing this, Fred and George became a little anxious. Fred said, don't worry, Dad, we have the ability to protect ourselves. George said, if you don't believe it, you can ask Lin. In Lin's illusion test, we were able to repel the joint attack of more than 30 Death Eaters with the strength of 2 people. The illusion array refined by Lin can allow 1 person to enter, and naturally it can also allow 2 people to enter at the same time and take the illusion test in the same illusion. And when fighting side by side, Fred and George's performance in the illusion test was so good that even Lin was amazed. Chapter 489, The Unsolvable Blood Curse, Harry becomes a Horcrux. Mr. Weasley didn't know what the illusion test that Lin En mentioned was, but since his children had made their choice, as a father, he should support them. Mr. Weasley winked at Fred and George and said, since you have decided, remember to always keep your original intention. Oh, and don't tell your mother, I don't think she will be happy. Hearing Mr. Weasley's words, Fred and George immediately clapped their hands happily, and the two said in unison, okay, thank you, Dad. Mr. Weasley was a very open-minded person, so he didn't object to Fred and George getting involved in such a big thing before they graduated. After all, Lin En was a grade younger than Fred and George. After Fred and George officially got involved, Mr. Weasley no longer avoided them. He asked, Lin, from what you said, you seem to know a lot about that Horcrux. Lin said lightly, according to the information I got, the snake's name is Nagini. She was once a witch who was under the blood curse and an old friend of Professor Dumbledore. But now, the blood curse has broken out on her, and she has completely lost her humanity and turned into a beast. Mr. Weasley was shocked by the information Lin brought. He said in disbelief, the Horcrux of Voldemort was once a wizard? Not only Mr. Weasley, but even Fred and George looked incredulous. Irina said affirmatively, yes, if you ask Dumbledore about Nagini, I think he will give you a suitable answer. Mr. Weasley frowned and said, blood curse, how did you come into contact with this curse? If I remember correctly, this vicious curse is inherited with the blood of wizards, and the means of casting the blood curse has almost been lost. Lin said frankly, in fact, among our potential partners, there is a little witch who is suffering from the blood curse. During her illusion test, without her knowing it, I tried to extract a part of her blood sample, and used alchemy to conduct a simple analysis of her blood. And the results of the alchemical analysis show that there is a very tricky curse in her blood. Even I can't forcibly annihilate it with the magic power of a demon level wizard, because once I forcibly attack this curse, then the curse will counterattack before death, bursting out all its power to destroy its carrier. Lin said in a deep voice. Hearing Lin's words, Mr. Weasley frowned even more deeply. Mr. Weasley was also a person who knew alchemy. He understood Lin's attainments in the field of alchemy better than anyone else present. Even Lin's alchemy could not solve the curse in the blood, so it would be even more difficult for others to do it. Fred and George were in shock. They did not expect that there would be such a poor guy among their companions, who had been with them day and night. George murmured to himself, is there anyone among our companions who has been cursed by the blood curse? Could it be? George remembered that during the training of the DA army, there was a thin figure who could learn every spell on the spot, but when asked to demonstrate it, she would show embarrassment, and it was very difficult to perform it. Fred asked confidently, is it the little witch from the green grass family? Lin nodded slightly, and he spread his hands and said, yes, but please keep this matter secret. I hope to find a way, whether it is alchemy or magic, to cure the blood curse on her, but so far, I have no clue. Mr. Weasley said comfortingly, Lin, this is not your problem. The blood curse is called one of the most unsolvable curses, and there is a reason for it. If you can find a way to remove the blood curse, I think you deserve a first-class medal of the Order of Merlin. Mr. Weasley's evaluation is quite pertinent. Although the blood curse is not among the 3 unforgivable curses, its viciousness and unsolvability are not inferior to the 3 unforgivable curses. If someone can really find a way to cure the blood curse, it is tantamount to finding a way to resolve the 3 unforgivable curses, which can be famous throughout the wizarding world. Such a wizard, let alone getting a Merlin first class medal, even being on equal footing with the president of the International Confederation of Wizards is not a problem. Let's get back to the point, Lin said. Nagini is not only one of Voldemort's Horcruxes, but also Voldemort's favorite pet. It can even be said that wherever Voldemort is, you can see the big snake. Irina continued Lin's words and said, that is to say, when you were attacked yesterday, Voldemort himself was probably near the Ministry of Magic. Mr. Weasley smiled bitterly and said, so, I was almost at the gates of hell. Not only Mr. Weasley, but even Fred and George were a little scared. Fortunately, Voldemort himself did not show up, otherwise, they would probably have lost their father. Irina continued, at present, we have the same opinion as Dumbledore, that is, to find and destroy all of Voldemort's Horcruxes first, and then kill Voldemort himself. This is also the only way to completely kill Voldemort. And the Horcruxes of Voldemort that we have discovered are only the diary that we have destroyed, the snake Nagini, and Harry Potter, Irina said with a serious look. She did not tell the carriers of the other 4 Horcruxes that she knew. Instead of telling the information that she couldn't even explain why she knew it, it would be better to let herself accidentally discover it and then destroy it. When Irina said the information that Harry was also a Horcrux, there was a hint of hesitation in her tone. She was worried that Fred and George would not be able to accept this fact after learning that Harry was also a Horcrux. Irina's worry was not without reason. After hearing this information, the 2 of them exclaimed in disbelief. Absurd. How could Harry be a Horcrux? Irina, you must be kidding? Fred and George were both unbelievable. Lin said in a deep voice, no, she is telling the truth. As you all know, Harry successfully resisted Voldemort's killing curse when he was a baby and made the killing curse rebound, turning Voldemort into a wandering soul and causing the Death Eaters to fall. Harry also gained the reputation of a savior because of this. And that night, when Voldemort's killing curse rebounded and killed him, all the rituals needed to make a Horcrux were completed. A piece of Voldemort's soul that was dispersed when he was hit by the killing curse, after the ritual was completed, autonomously attached itself to the only living thing in the room, Harry. And this made Harry the carrier of the soul fragment that originally belonged to Voldemort, and the last Horcrux. This is why we asked Harry to practice brain occlusion, because that is his only way to resist the control of the Horcruxes, Lin explained. Chapter 490 LUO's Christmas Dinner. Mr. Weasley rubbed his brow. Dumbledore did a good job of keeping the secret. Before Lin and Irina took the initiative to tell the story, even Mr. Weasley, a member of the Order of the Phoenix, didn't know that Harry was also one of Voldemort's Horcruxes. Of course, Dumbledore did this to protect Harry. With the case of Peter Pettigrew, the fewer people who knew that Harry was Voldemort's Horcrux, the better. However, Lin and Irina, who had read the original book, were sure that Fred, George, and Mr. Weasley were absolutely trustworthy. Therefore, the 2 did not choose to hide the truth from the 3. The 3 did not disappoint Lin and Irina's trust. After believing that Harry was also one of Voldemort's Horcruxes, Fred immediately looked at Lin and Irina nervously and asked, Lin, Irina, you shouldn't have told this to anyone else, right? George also echoed, yes, if other people knew about this, Harry would probably be criticized, which would definitely not be good. Lin smiled and said, don't worry, besides us, only Professor Dumbledore knows about this. You should always trust Professor Dumbledore. Hearing this, Fred and George finally breathed a sigh of relief. Seeing this, Lin knocked on Fred and George's forehead one by one and scolded with a smile. Okay, in your mind, am I the kind of person who would tell confidential things everywhere? Fred covered his forehead and sneered. We are just worried too much. George also covered his forehead. He nodded vigorously and said, that's right, that's right. We don't doubt your meaning. We are just worried about Harry. Lin shook his head. He did not argue with the 2 of them. Instead, He looked at Mr. Weirlie and said, "Mr. Weirlie, I hope you can remember the weird feeling you felt from Nagini. If you encounter the same object that gives you this weird feeling in other places, then it is very likely to be Voldemort's Horcrux. Among the few remaining Horcruxes of Voldemort, the Horcrux closest to their location and easiest to obtain, besides Harry, is the Slytherin locket at 12 Grimmauld Place. Although Lin and Irina knew that the Slytherin locket was at 12 Grimmauld Place, they did not know where it was hidden. Mr. Weirlie had lived at 12 Grimmauld Place for longer than they had combined. It would be great if Mr. Weirlie could sense the familiar strange aura of the Slytherin locket at 12 Grimmauld Place and identify it as a Horcrux. Mr. Weirlie nodded and said solemnly, "I understand. If I find other Horcruxes of Voldemort, I will inform Dumbledore and you immediately." Lin smiled and said, "That's great. That's it. Irina and I won't disturb you. Let's go out and let Ron and Ginny come in. They must still be worried about you." Irina also said, "Then, Mr. Weirlie, see you at Christmas." So Lin and Irina left the ward and let Ron and Ginny go in. After leaving the ward, the two found a reason to leave first. 2 days later was Christmas. As the last Christmas they could spend peacefully before the turmoil in the British wizarding world, Lin and Irina planned to hold a sumptuous Christmas dinner on Christmas Eve and spend this happy holiday well. To this end, Lin wrote to his teacher Wallace and Green, his master Nicholas Flamel and Mrs. Flamel 7 days ago, inviting them to come to Row Castle for the Christmas dinner. And Irina wrote to invite her parents, the Lowells, her teacher Newt, and Newt's wife Dinah, hoping that they could come to Row Castle for the holiday. The venue of this Christmas dinner was set in the living room on the first floor of Row Castle. Row Castle was large enough, and only by holding this Christmas dinner in Row Castle would it not be crowded. As for Lin's plan to hold a Christmas dinner at home, his mother Rowena naturally agreed very much, and she even expected Irina to come and celebrate the holiday with them more than Lin. After all, in Rowena's heart, she had already determined that Irina was her daughter-in-law. "Gale, we're back. Isn't Mom here?" Lin and Irina arrived at the Roll Castle using the Anywhere door key. Lin looked at the house elf Gale who was fiddling with a Christmas tree and asked. When Gale saw Lin and Irina appear, he immediately ran over in surprise and said, "Master, the hostess has just finished lunch and is resting upstairs. Is there anything Gale can do for you?" Lin smiled and touched Gale's smooth but fleshy head and asked, "Gale, are all the decorative props for the Christmas dinner ready?" "Of course." Gale nodded vigorously, snapped his fingers, and a large number of Christmas decorative props appeared on the ground. Gale will not hold back the master and the hostess. After learning that Roll Castle would welcome the legendary alchemist Nicholas Flamel who lived for more than 600 years, the famous French alchemist Wallace and Green, the famous British magical zoologist Newt Scamander, and the family of the master's future wife, Gale was so excited that he couldn't even sleep these days. Gale spent the past week renovating the entire Owl Manor. Several gardens that were abandoned due to time and cost issues were repaired by Gale, and with the help of magic, they were full of gorgeous flowers. Even though Gale was just a house elf, he had heard of Nicholas Flamel's reputation in the magic world. He felt honored to serve such a big man. Lin and Irina looked at the Christmas decorations on the ground. In addition to the more common holly, gold and silver ribbons, Christmas bells and various gift boxes, there were also many magic props. For example, colorful firecrackers that could turn into various small gadgets, magic snowflakes that could continuously fall from the sky and automatically appear in the air, and various desserts from Honeydukes. "Then, let's start decorating Roll Manor," Lin said happily. With a flick of his wand, more than a dozen colorful firecrackers flew up and hung on the Christmas tree not far away. Chapter 491 Didn't I get the beauty? Irina also waved her wand and moved the magic snowflakes to the ceiling around the Christmas tree, letting them fall from the sky. Seeing that Lin and Irina had started to decorate, Gale also worked hard to control the Christmas decorations one by one with magic and put them in the right place. Although Lin and Irina were very excited to decorate the Roll Castle, how could Gale, a house elf, really let his master do most of the work? Exclamation mark. When Lin and Irina finished decorating several Christmas trees in the living room, Gale had already decorated the exterior of the Roll Castle. From the outside of the Roll Castle, This tall castle looked like a huge Christmas tree, with many common magical plants related to Christmas draped on the stone walls of the castle. Coupled with a bell as big as a person, a treetop star that was bigger than a car, a doll several meters long, and a magic apple and ruby with a diameter of more than 1 meter. The royal castle at this time looked like a residence built inside a Christmas tree. When Lin and Irina began to decorate the hall on the first floor of the castle, Gale had already brought more materials to decorate the entire old manor. The work efficiency of house elves is always higher than that of wizards. Gale decorated the entire old manor with Christmas style props, and Lin and Irina had just finished decorating 3 floors. However, this was enough. The first floor of Roll Castle is the living room, dining room and kitchen. The second floor is where Lin and Rowena rest, and the third floor is the guest room for guests. The fourth floor of Roll Castle contains all the books of the Roll family, including those black magic books, and the passage to the fifth floor is sealed by a magic seal. These 2 floors are not open to guests, so there is no need to decorate them specially. So Lin asked Gale to take Irina to rest in the living room, and he began to clean up the remaining 3 empty rooms on the 3rd floor of Roll Castle. It was mentioned before that there are a total of 5 empty rooms on the 3rd floor of Roll Castle, but only 2 rooms are ready-made guest bedrooms. Normally, 2 rooms are enough for guests, but today is different. There are more guests visiting Roll Castle this Christmas than ever before. The Lowells, the Flammels, the Scamanders, and Wireless and Green all need a room. Although Irina and Lin have already confirmed their relationship, in order to avoid causing dissatisfaction or misunderstanding from her parents, Lin still left a guest bedroom for Irina. Anyway, there is a long way to go, so there is no rush, even if they have to live in the same room. Lin waved his wand, and with the help of magic, he only spent more than 10 minutes to clean up the remaining 3 empty rooms, so that they could be used to entertain guests. When Lin returned to the living room on the first floor, Rowena had finished her lunch break and walked down from upstairs. "Mom." Lin saw his mother coming downstairs and waved to her. Rowena nodded to Lin En, then looked at Irina with a smile on her face. She said happily, "Irina is here too, come and sit next to me." "Hello, Auntie." Irina responded obediently, and she got up and sat down next to Rowena. Seeing Rowena and Irina chatting quietly and laughing from time to time, Lin En felt very happy. The day passed quickly. At 10:30 AM the next day, the first batch of guests had already arrived. The first to come were the Lowells. With the alchemical navigator that Lin En had sent in the letter, the Lowells would not be blocked by the Muggle repelling spell and other protective magic around the Roll Manor. However, with the Fidelius charm, after the Lowells arrived at the gate of the Roll Manor, although they knew that they had arrived at their destination under the guidance of the alchemical navigator, they could not see the Roll Manor in front of them. After learning that Irina's parents had arrived, Lin and Irina hurried out to greet them, and did not let the couple wait for long. Mom and Dad. Irina happily got into the arms of her father Igor Lowell and her mother Carolina Lowell. Lin leaned slightly towards Igor and Carolina to show respect, and said softly, "Hello, Uncle, Aunt. Welcome to Roll Manor. I'm Irina's boyfriend, Lin Roll. You can just call me Lin." Igor looked at Lin with a scrutinizing look, and Carolina looked at him curiously. As early as the summer vacation, Irina told them that she was dating a boyfriend, but they had never met each other. "Hello, Lin." Carolina looked at him curiously. "Can you tell me how you and Irina met?" Carolina was very interested in the story of how Lin and Irina met. Facing his future mother-in-law, Lin En, who was always calm and composed, actually became a little shy. He scratched his head and smiled. "We have known each other 4 years ago. In these 4 years, we have gradually become partners who can talk about anything. Later, we got together during the Christmas ball at Hogwarts." Hearing Lin En's words, Igor's face showed a strange look. "It seems that you have known my daughter since she was in the 1st grade? Exclamation mark. At this time, Irina whispered, "In fact, when we first met, it was thanks to Lin En who saved my life from the troll. Otherwise I don't know if I can still see my parents." After hearing that Lin En had saved Irina's life, Igor's eyes finally softened when he looked at Lin En. Originally, after coming to this big manor and finding that Lin En's family was so rich, he once doubted whether Lin En was sincere to Irina. After all, in Western society, there are many noblemen who date commoner girls just for fun, but there are very few who are truly sincere. It is inevitable that Igor would worry about this. But after learning about the past between the two, coupled with Lin En's clear eyes, it is difficult for Igor to doubt Lin En. Carolina's tone also became softer, and she said lightly, I didn't expect such a thing to happen. Thanks to you, Lin En. Feeling the atmosphere become relaxed, Lin En was finally able to let go of his worries. He half-jokingly said, what's the matter? I can't just watch her die, right? What's more, I got the beauty. Chapter 492. The guests arrived and everything turned out well. After picking up Igor and Carolina, the group returned to the royal castle. Rowena was pleasantly surprised to see Irina's parents arrive, and happily chatted with them. Lin and Irina had smiles on their faces, and they were also happy to see their elders chatting there happily. Lin did not intend to get up and go to the entrance of the royal manor to pick them up. Igor and Carolina were ordinary people, not wizards, and they were not used to traveling with wizards' magic props, so Lin sent them the alchemy navigator and asked them to drive to the royal manor by themselves. But as wizards, Green, the Flammel couple, and the Scamander couple received the door key that Lin sent in the letter. It was a door key that had the authority to directly pass through the protective magic of the royal manor, and the destination was the gate of the royal castle. They could arrive directly at the gate of the royal castle without having to arrive at the entrance of the royal manor first. Therefore, Lin only needed to wait for the guests in the living room. As the sun gradually moved above everyone's heads, guests arrived at the royal castle one after another. The first to arrive was Lin's teacher, Wallace Green. He walked into the living room with a smile on his face, greeted by the house elf Gale. Welcome to the royal castle again, teacher. Lin immediately stood up and greeted his teacher. Green hugged Lin En gently and said with a smile, long time no see, Lin En. I remember you mentioned another thing in your letter about your classmates. Lin En nodded slightly and said, yes, teacher, they will also be our future comrades in arms. Their names are Fred Weali and George Weali, a pair of twins. I found that their talent in alchemy is extremely high and is definitely not inferior to mine, so I wrote them letters of recommendation and asked them to come to you to become your disciples. As Lin En spoke, he scratched his head embarrassedly and said, I wrote to them to tell them that you, teacher, are coming to visit Roll Castle. If nothing goes wrong, they should come to Roll Castle to visit you, teacher, tomorrow morning. Become a disciple. Green raised his eyebrows. I have no doubt about the alchemy talents of your classmates, but their character still needs to be tested. Lin En quickly assured, don't worry, teacher, the character of the comrades in arms I selected must be acceptable. Teacher, you can test them at will. Lin told Green in advance that the Weali twins were going to ask Green to be their apprentice, just to give Green a heads up, so that the Weali twins wouldn't suddenly come to Green's house and make Green feel embarrassed and in a dilemma. Green smiled and said, if it's true as you said, their alchemy talent is not lower than yours, and their character is good, then if I don't accept them, it seems like a waste of talent. While Lin was communicating with Green, two more people walked into the royal castle greeted by the house elf Gale. Those two people were Irina's teacher Newt Scamander and Newt's wife Tina Scamander. Teacher's wife, good morning. Irina hurriedly came up and said happily. Newt smiled and touched Irina's head, saying, Irina, I'm glad you invited us to spend Christmas together. You don't know how lonely two old people are in such a big villa. I don't believe it, Irina said with a chuckle. Just the little guys in your suitcase are enough to keep you from being bored. At this time, Igor and Carolina also came over. Igor stretched out his hand to Newt and said, you are Irina's teacher, Mr. Newt Scamander, right? Thank you for taking care of Irina during this period of time. Newt held Igor's hand, shook it gently, and said, nice to meet you, Mr. Lowell. Irina is very smart and well behaved. I feel lucky to have such a disciple. In this way, Newt and Igor discussed happily, while Tina chatted with Carolina, mainly because Carolina hoped to learn from Tina what happened to Irina when she was studying with Newt. On the contrary, Irina was excluded from the chat, but she was not annoyed, but smiled as she watched her teacher and her parents chat. When the time came to noon, two more white lights flashed at the door of the royal castle, and the house elf Gale hurried out. to welcome the two old men who were like candles in the wind. The two old men were Nicole Flamel and Perinel Flamel. Grandmaster, Grandmother, Lin, who was discussing with Green, saw the two people coming and hurried over to greet them. Together with Gale, he helped the two old people to sit on the sofa in the living room. Green also came over and took the teapot from Gale's hand and served tea to the two old people. Teacher, madam. Seeing the Flamel couple coming, Igor and Carolina were a little curious about their identities, so they whispered to Newt and Tina. After learning about Igor and Carolina's doubts, Newt whispered to them about Nico's identity and Nico's achievements in the magic world. Igor and Carolina were listening, exclaiming in disbelief, and their eyes were full of surprise when they looked at the Flamel couple. You know, Nicole Flamel's reputation is not only resounding in the magic world, but also well known in the muggle world. After learning that the old man who invented the Philosopher's Stone that turned stones into gold was right in front of them, Igor and Carolina's surprise was already beyond words. However, their surprise did not last long. They had already accepted the existence of magic in this world, so what else could they not accept? Exclamation mark. Therefore, they began to talk about Irina with Newt and Tina. On the other side, after learning that Nicole Flamel had arrived, Lin's mother Irina also came over and greeted Nicole. Welcome to Roll Castle, Mr. Flamel. It is our honor to have you here. Rowena personally placed a plate of fruit platter in front of Nicole, and she said so. Nico smiled and nodded. He said, don't be shy, Mrs. Rawle. Lin is a very good kid. Even on a family reunion day like Christmas, he is willing to bring two old people with us. We are very happy. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 493 Ancient Magic Blood Curse. As the pleasant afternoon tea passed, the Christmas dinner that had been carefully prepared for a long time finally arrived. With the help of kitchen magic, Gale cooked delicious dishes and served them on the table. Considering that the guests of this Christmas dinner included the French couple Lin En and Green, Gale cooked many French dishes in addition to roast steak, lamb stew, chicken salad and fried fish fillet as in previous Christmas dinners. For example, foie gras, oyster cups, baked snails and marseille fish soup were all served on the table by Gale. What surprised Irina the most was the several oriental delicacies that Lin specially asked Gale to cook, such as dang po pork, mapo tofu, spicy chicken and dumplings with various fillings. These oriental delicacies were not only loved by Lin and Irina, but also praised by guests such as Green, Newt and Tina. After tasting a bite of dang po pork, Nico said happily, this is exactly the same local food I tasted when I traveled to the east more than 200 years ago. That's thoughtful. Lin En, Irina ate these long lost delicacies in small bites, and she squinted her eyes in enjoyment, and Gale's cooking skills are really good. In Irina's opinion, although the dishes cooked by Gale still lacked a little charm, the taste was no less than those of the chefs of 5-star hotels. Thank you for the compliment, it's Gale's honor. Gale brought a plate of egg pudding to the table and said happily, this Christmas dinner can be said to be a happy one for both the host and the guests. After the dessert session, not only Lin En and Irina, but also Nico was full of childishness to uncover the colorful firecrackers hanging on the Christmas tree. After opening some interesting gadgets from these colorful firecrackers, even if these gadgets were all chemical products that could be made by underage wizards without any technical content, Nico could still laugh at them. There is no so-called vigil at Christmas in the magic world, so after Lin En told Gale to deliver the Christmas presents on time for him, he climbed into bed early. Irina, Green, the Lowells, the Scamanders, and the Flamels also went to rest in the guest room on the 3rd floor early. The night passed quickly, and when Lin En woke up from his bed, the foot of his bed was already piled with Christmas presents. After the DA army came into being this school year, the number of little wizards willing to give him Christmas presents increased exponentially. The Christmas presents that could only fill up one side of his bedside now covered the floor, leaving him no place to step. After seeing so many Christmas presents, Lin En was moved and wanted to laugh. Gale, help me sort out my Christmas presents and keep them away. Just leave the Christmas presents of my closest people for me to open. Lin En snapped his fingers and called Gale out, and he said so to Gale. Gale agreed and snapped his fingers, and the gift boxes in the room disappeared at a very fast speed. When these Christmas gifts were sent to Lin's room, they had been checked one by Gale. As the house elf of Roll Manor, Gale was naturally obliged to check whether these Christmas gifts were safe. Things like chocolate mixed with love potion in a gift box would never appear in the Christmas gifts sent to Roll Manor, because such gifts would be checked by Gale in advance with detection magic, and then picked out and thrown away. Therefore, Gale sorted out these Christmas gifts that were originally placed in Lin's room, and it was still very easy. After Gale's screening, 90% of the Christmas gifts in the room had disappeared, leaving only a dozen Christmas gifts in the room, and only 5 Christmas gifts were placed in front of Lin. These 5 Christmas gifts came from Rowena, Irina, Irving, Green and Nicole Flamel. Lin first opened the Christmas gift Rowena gave him. Rowena's gift was a scarf knitted by her own hands. Although it was not expensive, it was important to have a thoughtful look. Irina gave him a belt with 10 leather pockets on the side. The pockets were small and only looked like they could be used to insert a quill. But Irina cast a powerful traceless stretching spell on these 10 small pockets, which made the small pockets that were originally difficult to insert a quill have a space volume equivalent to that of a small room. This means that Lin En can store things equivalent to the size of 10 small rooms in this belt, and these things include, but are not limited to, all chemical materials, weapons, medicines, etc. This is definitely a very convenient piece of equipment, even compared to the old chemical equipment that Lin En made himself. It is not inferior. The most important point is that Lin En can perform secondary processing on this belt, strengthen its various functions through alchemy, and even add new functions to it. What Iwin gave to Lin En was a copy of magic book that recorded ancient magic, and Lin En was very familiar with the cover of this copy. He vaguely remembered that when he was studying the ancient magic purgatory demon puppet in the Folly Castle, he had seen such a cover in the crystal cabinet that contained 13 magic books that recorded ancient magic. The 13 magic books in the crystal cabinet of the Folly Castle all carried special magic that could help readers understand and learn the ancient magic recorded on them. But this copy did not have such a function. However, this did not mean that wizards could not learn the ancient magic recorded in it from this copy. It was just that the difficulty and cost of learning would be much higher. The name of this ancient magic is called Blood Curse Killing. Lin En gently stroked the cover of the copy and read out the name of the ancient magic on the cover. After reading out the name of this ancient magic, Lin En had some guesses in his mind. Perhaps Iwin's purpose was not to let himself learn this ancient magic, but to use his hands to let people who are more suitable for this ancient magic learn it. Or maybe Iwin had already chosen someone to learn this ancient magic, and Iwin wanted me to learn this ancient magic as well, so that they could complement each other and let the person Iwin chose learn this ancient magic faster. Lin En's eyes narrowed slightly, and when he opened the copy of the ancient magic called Blood Curse and read the first page introducing this ancient magic, his guess was confirmed. Chapter 494 Bazooka and System Panel. Blood Curse, as the name suggests, is to control one's own blood through special magical means, turning it into the sharpest blade, turning it into an invincible sword in one's hand, and using it to kill powerful enemies. The prerequisite for learning the ancient magic Blood Curse is to be able to cast the magic cutting spell silently and without a wand, as well as the means of casting any blood curse. After the wizard casts the ancient magic Blood Curse, the wizard can turn his own blood, and even the power of the blood contained in the blood, into any form of energy body such as blood blades to attack the enemy. The stronger the wizard's own blood, the more powerful the blood curse he emits. If the wizard's blood carries a special talent, then the talent will be materialized in the blood curse. After Lin En finished reading the introduction of this ancient magic called Blood Curse, he had a candidate who was most suitable to learn this ancient magic in his mind. Astoria Greengrass. Yes, Astoria, who was carrying the blood curse, was probably the most suitable candidate to learn this ancient magic among all the people he knew, except for himself and Irina. If Astoria could learn this ancient magic, she would be able to use the blood curse technique to control her own blood. This means that she could suppress the blood curse in her blood by controlling her blood. Not only that, the blood curse attack method includes materializing the special talents contained in the blood. Although the blood curse on Astoria is a curse, it can barely be regarded as a special power in her blood. If Astoria can use the blood curse to suppress the blood curse in her body, and even materialize the curse power of the blood curse in battle and turn it into a sharp blade aimed at the enemy, then the blood curse in Astoria's body will not only no longer be a burden to her, but will become her greatest help. After understanding this, Lin En also understood Iwin's intention. He has a talent for fire affinity in his blood, and if he learns the blood curse and uses it, then the blood blade he summons may burn like a flame, which is the embodiment of the special talent in his blood. When he learned the ancient magic of blood curse, he would be able to judge the scope of the ancient magic of blood curse for the special talent in the bloodline with his level of Demon King level wizard. In this way, they could determine whether the curse power of the blood curse in Astoria's body was within the judgment range of this so-called special talent, and decide whether to let Astoria learn this ancient magic. Lin En put away the copy of blood curse. Although Lin En had mastered the silent and wandless casting of the cutting curse, it was only forced out by the powerful magic power of the Demon King level wizard, not his own understanding of the cutting curse to the level of silent and wandless casting. In addition, most of the curses that Lin En learned from the black magic books on the 4th floor of the Roll Castle were curses that directly cursed the opponent's body or soul, and there was no curse with blood as the medium, so he did not meet the prerequisites for learning the ancient magic of blood curse. Before meeting the prerequisite for learning the ancient magic of blood curse, Lin En would put this matter on the agenda, but he would not be too anxious. After putting away the copy, Lin En opened the Christmas gift that Green gave him. However, after seeing the Christmas gift that Green gave him, the corners of Lin En's mouth twitched wildly again. He wanted to run upstairs immediately, knock on Green's door, and ask him how he came up with such a gift. Last year, Green gave Lin En a Christmas gift of the improved blueprint of the time loop formation, which made Lin En think that Green had turned over a new leaf, but who would have thought that this year's Christmas gift was directly back to the original form. In this Christmas gift box that was larger than a person, there was a cylindrical object, and next to this object, there were 10 similar, but smaller objects neatly stacked. Lin En's eyelids twitched wildly, and the corners of his mouth twitched as he said, a Type 69 rocket launcher, paired with 10 85mm super caliber hollow charge armor piercing rockets. Teacher, you are really amazing. Yes, the one in the Christmas gift box was a Type 69 rocket launcher in the Muggle world, which was developed by the East more than 20 years ago, and discontinued more than 10 years ago, but is still active in the battlefields of Africa and the Middle East. And the 10 neatly stacked rockets next to this Type 69 rocket launcher are the ammunition for this Type 69 rocket launcher. Teacher, I know you like the arms of the Muggle world, but you really don't have to send me arms every year. I really don't need them. Lin En's hands trembled slightly as he put the Type 69 rocket launcher and the Christmas gift box into the pocket space of the belt that Irina gave him. After putting away Green's Christmas gift, Lin En wiped the sweat that didn't actually exist on his forehead, and then opened the Christmas gift that Nicholas Flamel gave him. Compared to Green's Christmas present, Nico's Christmas present was much more serious. Nico's Christmas present to Lin was an all-chemical detector. Although all chemical detectors are considered a very common all-chemical product in the magic world, how can an all-chemical detector made by the great alchemist Nicol Flamel be an ordinary all-chemical product? Exclamation mark. This all-chemical detector is like the system in those cool novels that Lin had read in his previous life. It can directly display the various properties of the detected object in front of Lin in the form of a screen similar to a system panel. The attributes that this alchemy detector can automatically detect include the name, gender, age, social status, magic strength, and magic level of the detected object. Under the detection of this alchemy detector, the attribute panel presented by Lin En is as follows. Name, Lin En Luo. Gender, male. Age, 16 years old. Social status, student at Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. Famous British alchemist, Demon King level wizard. Magic strength, Demon King level, medium to weak in the same realm. Magic level, Demon King level, weak in the same realm. After seeing the evaluation of his magic strength and magic level on his attribute panel given by this alchemy detector, Although Lin En was a little reluctant, he had to admit that this was indeed the fact. He was a newly promoted Demon King level wizard, so his magic strength was medium to weak in the same realm, which was understandable. However, his lack of understanding of fire magic and the promotion path, that was partly based on emotions, made his magic level the weakest among the Demon King level. Chapter 495, Deducing the Blood Curse, and Extracting a Sample of the Curse Power. What appeared in front of Lin En was only the most basic panel of this alchemy detector. Many alchemy detectors in the magic world have the same function. The most outstanding thing about it in the basic panel is that it can accurately detect the magic strength and magic level of the Demon King level wizard. This basic panel is just the tip of the iceberg of the functions of this alchemy detector. Its real powerful function is that it can present a certain characteristic of the test object that Lin En wants to know on the attribute panel. Lin En set the test object to himself again, and then whispered, detect blood talent, emotional state, proficient skills and soul state. As Lin En's voice fell, the attribute panel that turned into a screen and appeared in front of Lin En added 4 new lines of data on the basis of the original 6 data. Blood talent, flame affinity, top, alchemy talent, high, magic talent, high, emotional status, stable skills, flame magic, Quasi-Demon King level, alchemy, Quasi-Demon King level, soul status, stable. After seeing these 4 pieces of data, Lin En lowered his eyes slightly. If this alchemy detector can even analyze and detect other people's talents and best abilities, then he only needs to use this alchemy detector to detect the enemy before the battle, and perhaps he can directly analyze the opponent's weaknesses without relying on repeated trials and sacrifices to obtain them. Not only that, this alchemy detector can even analyze the power in the blood, so if it is used to analyze Astoria's blood, it may be able to analyze the curse power of the bleeding spell. In this way, they only need to get the source of the curse power through a reverse deduction, and they can obtain the means to remove or control the blood curse. Thinking of this, Lin En's eyes lit up, and he took out a small glass bottle of about 10 milliliters from his pocket, and in the glass bottle was placed bright red blood that was preserved intact by magic. That was the blood sample that Lin En had taken from Astoria during a previous illusion test. Test this blood, Lin En said lightly. This alchemy detector can not only detect the attributes of wizards, but also the composition of other things. Soon, a screen appeared in front of Lin En, and the test results of this blood sample were also presented in front of Lin En. Blood provider, Astoria Greengrass blood status, sub-health blood provider magic strength, or a level blood bloodline talent, curse talent, high, magic talent, high, blood status, cursed blood curse analysis, blood curse. Sample can be extracted. After reading this simple analysis of the blood sample, Lin En couldn't help but be a little surprised. He didn't expect that Astoria, who was cursed by the blood curse, had a high talent in magic and curses. However, Astoria had never learned curses, which also led to her curse talent not being discovered. In addition to Astoria's blood talent, what surprised Lin En was the special symbol of extractable sample behind the blood curse analysis on the attribute panel. Lin En's original psychological expectation was just to let the alchemical detector detect the curse power of the blood spell and analyze it. However, this alchemical detector was able to directly extract the sample of the curse power of the blood spell, which made Lin En overjoyed. Lin En did not hesitate to gently tap the special symbol of extractable sample on the screen with his right hand. A soft wave of magic power escaped from the alchemical detector, and the invisible hand lifted up the blood sample, and the invisible magic power poured into the blood sample. As time passed, wisps of black air emerged from the blood under the traction of this invisible magic power. However, in order to prevent the blood curse's curse power from counterattacking before death and destroying the blood sample, the extracted blood curse's curse power was pitifully small, and only accounted for 1/1000th of the curse power contained in the blood sample. Under the control of the alchemical detector, the wisps of black gas were compressed into an energy ball with a diameter of 1 mm, suspended in front of Lin En. Lin En did not rashly touch the curse power of the blood curse, which was said to be unsolvable, but once again moved his mind and asked the alchemical detector to analyze the sample of the curse power. Curse type, blood curse. Curse scientific name, blood curse. Curse effect, continuously weaken the host's body function, and kill the host after the outbreak. Curse activity, weak curse transmission method, special ceremony. After seeing these 5 data, Lin En finally put his mind at ease. He stretched out his hand to touch the curse power and feel its magic fluctuations. Since the transmission of this curse requires a special ceremony, Lin En does not need to worry that he will come into contact with this curse power and cause himself to be cursed by the blood curse. In fact, Lin En didn't need to worry about the future. After all, after the means of casting the blood curse was lost, the only means of spreading the blood curse was blood inheritance. If the curse power would be cursed after contact, then the group of healers who studied the blood curse decades ago would probably be dead. Can the blood curse and the ritual of casting be reversed through this sample of curse power? Lin En looked at the alchemy detector in front of him and asked. The screen that the alchemy detector transformed into changed, and only 2 lines of text were displayed on the screen. The first line was the spell that the alchemy detector analyzed after reversing the sample of the curse power and could be used to summon the same type of curse power. The curse power summoned by this spell could not be directly injected into the enemy's body, but only existed in the form of magic ball like the curse power sample in front of Lin En. This was just like when Lin En cast the ancient magic purgatory demon golem, chanting the obscure spell to summon the special magic power from hell, which also existed in the form of a grey energy ball. In order to cast the real blood curse, a special curse ritual must be used to cast the blood curse on the enemy. However, the answer given by the alchemy detector about the curse ritual was that the medium was insufficient, and it could not be deduced. Lin En was not surprised by this. After all, if only a sample of the curse power could be used to deduce the entire process of casting the blood curse, then the blood curse would not be called an unsolvable curse. Chapter 496, The Fusion of the Attributes of the Ice God and the Original Flame of the Zoe Skyfire. While Lin was using the alchemical detector given to him by Nicholas Flamel to deduce the origin of the blood curse, Irina was also opening her Christmas presents in the guest room on the 3rd floor. When Irina woke up from the soft big bed, the number of Christmas presents piled up at the foot of her bed was even more than that of Lin. Most of these Christmas presents came from DAME partners and little wizards from Gryffindor College. Although Gryffindor College was not all united, it was much more united than Slytherin College, and had more personal connections, unlike some of the pure-blood wizards in Slytherin who put profit above all else. Therefore, there were quite a few little wizards who had a good relationship with Irina on weekdays, which made many more little wizards willing to send Christmas presents to Irina than Lin. Irina followed the same method as Lin, and sorted the Christmas gifts into categories, and put them into her own small world in her suitcase. After leaving only the Christmas gifts from her closest people, there were only 6 Christmas gifts left in front of her. These 6 Christmas gifts came from her parents, Lin, Newt, Harry, Ron, and Hermione. Irina first opened the Christmas gifts her parents gave her. Just like the scarf Rowena gave Lin, the Lowells also gave her a gift that was not expensive but full of heart. It was a hat woven by Carolina and a pair of leather gloves made by Igor. After Irina put them away, she opened the Christmas gift Lin gave her. After opening the gift box, Irina saw a beautiful glass bottle in the middle of the gift box, and inside the glass bottle was a spark of twinkling starlight. Under this beautiful glass bottle, there was also a note written by Lin herself. Irina opened the note and read out the contents. This is a ray of the original flame of the purple starfire. Its essence is the origin of the stars. If you combine it with your ice power, it will give your ice power the power of the stars and higher destructive power. After learning about the effect of this ray of the original flame of the purple starfire, Irina couldn't help but feel a little moved. You know, this is a part of the star origin in Lin En's body, which is the original flame of the purple starfire, not the purple starfire formed by the star power bred by the star origin. The star origin can breed endless star power, but the star origin will not regenerate, which means that, if Lin En gives this ray of the original flame of the purple starfire transformed by the star origin to her, then Lin En himself will lose the power of this ray of the star origin forever. Not only that, Lin En can remember all the abilities of the ancient magic ice phantom god that she learned, which also touched her. Irina learned the ancient magic of Ice God 2 years ago, and because she had never used the special ability of Ice God to fuse other attributes, she almost forgot that Ice God had such a function. She vaguely remembered that the original words recorded in the magic book that recorded the ancient magic of Ice God were that the ice power transformed by Ice God had the ability to absorb other special attributes for its own use. But the same strand of ice power can only fuse one special attribute at the same time. But ice powers containing different special attributes can be stored in the same position of the caster's body at the same time without conflicting with each other. This so-called special attribute includes many magic materials in the magic world. Even the poison of the snake monster can be regarded as a special attribute, so the original flame of the purple myrtle skyfire is naturally one of them. Zhui Xianhuo has an extremely high temperature, which is contrary to the nature of the power of ice. Therefore, when the power of ice merges with the origin flame of Zhui Xianhuo, the power of ice can only extract the extremely high destructive power contained in the origin flame of Zhui Xianhuo and the essence of its star origin. But this is enough. The originally ordinary ice power will be transformed into a special ice containing the power of stars, and its destructive power will be multiplied geometrically, which is something that Irina's original ice power cannot do. Thinking of this, Irina waved her hands and released the ice power in her body. Since Lin En intends to give her this ray of the origin flame of Zhui Xianhuo, she will naturally not be hypocritical because of the preciousness of this origin flame. To maximize the value of this origin flame is the real way to be worthy of this gift. After feeling the energy contained in this strand of the original flame of the purple myrtle skyfire, Irina released about 60% of the ice power in her body, which was just enough to accommodate this strand of the original flame. Yes, although this strand of the original flame seemed to be just a small flame, as if it could go out at any time, the energy contained in it was enough to match 60% of the ice power in Irina's body. While Irina controlled the ice power to float in the air, she gently waved her magic wand, holding the strand of the original flame towards the ice power suspended in the air, prompting the two to merge with each other. The repulsion brought by ice and fire was greater than Irina had imagined. When Irina tried to merge the two together, she could feel a very strong resistance. The resistance came from both the original flame and the ice power. The resistance of the original flame came from its scorching temperature. The terrifying high temperature prevented it from merging into the extremely cold ice power. The resistance brought by the power of ice came from the ancient magic of the ice phantom god. During the separation process of the high temperature attribute in the origin flame, the ice phantom god only needed to extract the part of the origin flame that was beneficial to the power of ice, which meant that it had to first remove the part of the origin flame that was useless or even harmful to the power of ice. This process lasted for nearly an hour. When the high temperature emitted by the origin flame of the wisp of Zhui Xianhuo completely dissipated, leaving only a faint purple gold light ball and a few starlight, it finally merged smoothly into the power of ice released by Irina. Irina waved her hands gently, and she looked at the fused ice power in her palm. Under the fusion of the origin of the stars, the ice power looked more like star-shaped snowflakes. On this crystal clear snowflake with many beautiful patterns, purple gold light flashed continuously. Chapter 497, Zhui Cold Star. Looking at the purple gold star-shaped snowflake in her hand, Irina could sense the powerful force that was constantly emanating from the snowflake. The temperature of this snowflake was colder than the aggregate of ordinary ice power, and its edges were also very sharp. Irina had no doubt that, if she threw this snowflake, it would be able to penetrate the 2-foot thick wall of the roll castle. Not only that, Irina could also control the star power contained in this purple gold snowflake alone, allowing this purple gold snowflake to burst out starlight all over the sky to attack the enemy, or to turn it into a shield around herself. It can be said that this special snowflake is a weapon that combines offense and defense. Irina stroked the surface of the snowflake and whispered, "Since it is a star-shaped snowflake, I will call you the Cold Star." Irina tried to give this snowflake a new name. Irina could feel that after the ice power was integrated with other special attributes, it would become a new energy body. It contained the characteristics of the ice power, but it was no longer the ice power. Therefore, she still needs to name this new energy body. However, you have merged with the origin flame of Lin En's Zhui Heavenly Fire, Irina thought. Then why not take the first two characters of Zhui Heavenly Fire and call you Zhui Cold Star? The ice power is a part of Irina's body, so after the 60% of the ice power merged with the origin flame of Zoe heavenly fire and the wisp of star origin contained in the origin flame, this wisp of star origin also became a part of Irina's body. The ice power that merged with the star origin had already been integrated into Irina's body, and the Zoe cold star in her hand was actually like Lin En's Zoe heavenly fire, which was differentiated from the Zoe cold star origin in Irina's body. The Zoe cold star she released would not contain the star origin, but only the star power differentiated from the origin of Zoe cold star, which allowed Irina to not worry about whether her star origin would be consumed when using the Zoe cold star in battle. This gift, I like it very much. Irina stared at the small purple star in her palm, with a smile on her lips. Irina flipped her palm, and the purple star dissipated in the air. She looked at the empty beautiful glass bottle, and collected it, as if it were a treasure. Irina cast her eyes on the remaining Christmas gifts, and opened the Christmas gift box that Newt gave her. The gift box contained a formula for a magic bait for magical animals. The magic rice balls made with this magic formula have a special effect of attracting magical animals. Just like Irina was born with a talent for affinity with magical animals, this magic rice ball also has this special attraction to magical animals. Whether the other party is a carnivore, a herbivore or an omnivore, it is difficult to refuse the temptation of such a magic rice ball. According to the words Newt wrote below the recipe, this magic rice ball was originally used by some poaching dark wizards to lure prey, but after the poaching gang was captured by Newt and the Aurors, the recipe that was originally treasured by the poaching gang came into Newt's hands. After getting the formula, Newt did not hand it over to the Aurors or the Ministry of Magic. He knew better than Irina the corruption behind the Ministry of Magic in various countries. Newt was not surprised at all. If he handed the magic formula in his hand to the Aurors or the Ministry of Magic, how many poaching gangs would have mastered this magic formula overnight? If the magic formula is leaked, the Ministry of Magic will at best apologize to the public and admit its dereliction of duty, or even take the cold treatment method to suppress the magic formula leak, or find another big thing to steal their heat. But what about those innocent magical animals? Exclamation mark. If the magic formula is leaked, there will be tens of thousands, or even more magical animals, that will be killed by the poaching gangs. This is why Newt dares not and cannot gamble. He does not trust the Ministry of Magic, and even less trusts human nature. Under this premise, Newt is still willing to give this magic formula to Irina, which shows how much he trusts Irina. In the text attached to the formula by Newt, Newt also mentioned that the magic rice balls he made with this magic formula have rescued many magical animals that were injured, but afraid of human wizards, and dared not show up in front of him. Many magical animals have been persecuted by human wizards, which makes them afraid of human wizards, and dare not show up in front of human wizards. This makes Newt want to rescue them, but he is always anxious, because they don't want to show up. In the past, Newt could only try to make them obedient through the courtship dances of those magical animals, but now, with just a simple magic rice ball, Newt can easily trick those magical animals that need rescue into his suitcase. Not only that, even the magical animals raised in Newt's suitcase, Newt can also use these magic rice balls to train them. This is simple, just some reward and punishment system. With the wisdom of these magical animals, they can naturally distinguish between one mealful and one mealful. As long as they can keep eating delicious magic rice balls, they are still willing to listen to Newt's instructions. After reading these words, Irina finally understood. When she helped Newt feed those magical animals before, she had seen that there were more or less some rice-like foods in the buckets of food. Whether the object of feeding was a leopard, a winged demon or a harmless botricle, the food was mixed with this kind of rice. Even in the bowl of snuff, 2 or 3 grains of this kind of rice could be seen. At first, Irina was a little confused about why Newt added rice to the food of each magical animal. At first, she thought it was similar to the habit of eating rice as the staple food in the East, but now, she finally understood. Irina just read the magic formula a few times and memorized it. She carefully put the magic formula away. Next, she opened the Christmas gifts given to her by Harry, Ron and Hermione one by one. The Christmas gifts they gave were much simpler. Harry gave her a book called Practical Defensive Magic and its Control of Dark Magic. If this book was placed in a DA army gathering, it would be quite practical. But this book, Practical Defensive Magic and its Control of Dark Magic, was not very useful to Irina. Chapter 498. We are in sync and share the same thoughts. After all, when facing those dark wizards or Death Eaters who use dark magic on her, she would rather use an Avada Kedavra curse to fight back, rather than using some defensive magic to fight back and forth. Ron gave her a big bag of Bibi every flavor beans, which was quite in line with Irina's heart, as she was a dessert lover. Hermione gave her a diary, and every page of the diary was written with inspirational words like today's work, today's work. It can only be said that Hermione's academic style has not changed after so many years. After opening the 6 most important Christmas gifts for Irina, she began to open the remaining 20 or so Christmas gifts in the room, given to her by her good friends. On the other side, Lin had opened all the Christmas gifts left in the room, and walked out of the door. Just as he was about to go downstairs to eat, he ran into Green, who happened to come down from the 3rd floor, and was also going to the living room to have breakfast. "Teacher, is your Christmas gift a little?" Lin En chose his words carefully, trying to persuade Green to be kind. However, before Lin En could finish his words, Green laughed and said, "How about it? Isn't my Christmas gift to you very innovative? Although you are a Demon King level wizard, you don't need those things to protect yourself. But compared with the back and forth battle with magic wands, the things I gave you are not so practical, but they are also very interesting, and the scene is much more spectacular, isn't it? This time it can only be regarded as a small gadget. I will give you a big one next year." Green smiled and patted Lin En's shoulder, saying so. Lin En's mouth twitched even more. Damn, is this what he meant? Exclamation mark. Killing the enemy with a rocket launcher. The scene is indeed more spectacular than an ordinary Avada Kedavra curse, but is this what he wants? Exclamation mark. Whose good people fight with rocket launchers? Exclamation mark. Also, the Type 69 rocket launcher this time is just a small thing, so what big thing do you want to do next year? Exclamation mark. Atomic bomb? Exclamation mark. Lin felt a dull pain in his brow, and he forced his mouth to open, saying, "Teacher, you may have misunderstood what I meant. I wanted to." Green interrupted Lin again, and he said with a look of sudden enlightenment, "Oh, I understand. 10 rounds of ammunition must not be enough for you, right? Yes, even those Death Eaters have dozens of people. I neglected it. When I return to France, I will give you 100 rounds of ammunition. I guarantee you will have fun." Lin slapped himself on the forehead. He didn't want to argue with Green anymore. He was afraid that, if he continued to argue, Green would directly take out an arsenal and give it to him. However, when Lin covered his face and was speechless, Green's mouth showed a smile like a prank. When the two came to the living room and sat at the dining table, other people on the 3rd floor also came down one after another. Everyone enjoyed a breakfast happily. At Rowena's suggestion, the house elf Gale took the Lowells, the Scamanders, and the Flammels to visit the Row Manor. Gale seemed very happy. Today's Row Manor is the result of his labor. The originally abandoned gardens have long been transformed into many national parks in the Muggle world. However, Green did not go with them, but stayed in the living room to drink tea. Not long after, 2 white lights suddenly lit up outside the Row Castle. Fred and George came to the outside of the Row Castle under the guidance of the door key. Their door keys were naturally granted by Lin, and made by Irina. After Lin brought the 2 in, Green's eyes stayed on the 2. Green could see that Fred and George were the 2 comrades in arms who had high alchemy talents, and wanted to worship him as a teacher. As early as 5 years ago, when Green was still a professor of defense against the dark arts at Hogwarts Castle, he noticed these 2 children who looked a little naughty. He found that the 2 children seemed to have a special interest in alchemy, but he didn't care too much at the time. After all, Fred and George's interest in alchemy at the time was more about those prank products, not alchemy itself. Now, Fred and George were brought to Green again, which forced Green to re-examine these 2 children with alchemy talents. Long time no see, Professor Green. Fred came over and handed Green the letter of introduction written by Lin. George also came over and said, "Professor Green, if possible, please allow us to worship you as your teacher. We want to learn more advanced alchemy." After reading Lin's letter of introduction, Green turned his light blue eyes to the two little wizards in front of him. He chuckled at the two and said, "Fred and George, right? The two children of the Weasley family. I have an impression of you. Since Lin told me that you are gifted in the field of alchemy, then, please show it." As he said that, Green made a please gesture with his hand. Seeing this, Lin En, who was not far away, hurried over and said, "Teacher, I will take you to the training ground of Roll Manor." Hearing Lin En's words, Green's eyes flashed with surprise. You know, in most cases, alchemy is to engrave alchemy arrays on items, make enchanted alchemy creations, or use alchemy to create new alchemy creations. And for these things, skilled alchemists don't even need any special alchemy laboratories, even in a place like the first floor hall of Roll Castle, which is not a quiet place, they can easily complete it. This is also one of the projects that Green plans, to investigate Fred and George. However, since Lin En said that he would take them to the training ground of Roll Manor, it means that Fred and George have been able to apply alchemy to actual combat, which even many famous alchemists in France may not be able to do. The four came to the training ground located in the south of Roll Manor, and after entering the field, Fred and George consciously waved their wands to show Green their alchemy attainments. The two wands pointed at the same place, and countless golden threads spit out from the top of their wands in an instant, interweaving the same alchemical array. Seeing this scene, Green stood with his arms folded, watching their operation with interest. Two alchemists worked together to refine the same alchemical array, and ensured that there would be no mistakes such as entanglement of alchemical threads, and repeated drawing of patterns. This operation required a very high level of tacit understanding between the two alchemists. Telepathy and common thoughts. Is this the advantage brought by the twins? Exclamation mark. Chapter 499. Spell Damage Department. Lockhart is a complete idiot. After about a minute, Lin En estimated that the alchemy array they had created was about to take shape, so he gently pointed his wand at a stone not far away. Under the effect of transfiguration, the stone instantly turned into a giant steel block with a length of 5 meters. Seeing this, Fred and George nodded to Lin En gratefully, and then raised their wands at the same time, pointing at the steel block that Lin En had transformed with transfiguration. The next moment, a sky full of golden beams burst out from the alchemy array they had created together, like a meteor shower, drawing a beautiful arc in the air, and shooting towards the steel block. The alchemy array created by Fred and George was quite powerful. In less than 10 seconds, the golden beams that kept bombarding the steel block had already made the surface of the steel block bumpy. Judging from the marks on the steel block, the power of the golden beam of light from this alchemy array is enough to smash a giant's head, at least kill one or even several Death Eaters. Lin En even taught you this? Green looked at Lin En in surprise, then looked at Fred and George. The technique of refining an alchemy array out of thin air and applying it to combat is not a secret. On the contrary, many alchemists know how to do it. But even under the premise that this technique is semi-public, there are less than 10 alchemists in the entire French magic world who have mastered the ability to apply alchemy to combat. It can be seen that it is not difficult to learn this method, but it is not so easy to use it freely. However, Fred and George, two self-taught little guys who have only asked Lin En for advice a few times, have already mastered the method of applying the alchemy array to actual combat. Based on this alone, Green cannot deny their qualifications in the field of alchemy. Another 3 minutes passed, and the golden beam that had been bombarding the steel cube finally penetrated the steel cube. A stream of golden beams flew out from the other side of the steel cube, and finally exploded on the ground of the training ground. Fred and George looked at each other, and finally dispersed the alchemy array in front of them. The two came to Green respectfully. Green clapped his hands lightly, smiled at Fred and George, and said, "Not bad, not bad. If you are willing, you can come to France with Lin En to find me during the summer vacation and study with me for a while." Hearing Green's words, Fred and George's eyes lit up. They understood that, although Green did not directly say that he wanted to accept them as apprentices, since Green was willing to let them study with him during the summer vacation, it meant that Green was willing to give them a chance. As long as they grasped this opportunity, it would not be difficult to worship Green as a teacher and learn more advanced alchemy. "Thank you, Professor Green," Fred and George said in unison. Green just smiled and waved his hand, then turned and walked towards the direction of the Roll Castle. After enjoying lunch at Row Castle, the guests said goodbye and left. Lin and Irina also followed the previous agreement and took the portkey to visit number 12 Grimald's place. Good afternoon, Irina. Thank you for the broom maintenance kit you gave me. Harry opened the door and said to Irina happily. After seeing Lin standing behind Irina, Harry also greeted him happily. Good afternoon, Lin. Thank you for the magic propulsion device for my broom. After installing the magic propulsion device, the flight speed of my firebolt increased by nearly 40%. Lin and Irina both greeted Harry with a smile. Harry's hobbies are nothing more than those few points. Giving him something related to the flying broom can make Harry very happy. Especially the magic propulsion device that Lin gave to Harry, which he spent half an hour to refine. This kind of modified equipment that has never been seen in the Quidditch related market made Harry very surprised. Although Lin En didn't know much about sports cars in his previous life, he knew that the original ones were not as good as the modified ones. Even if the firebolt had excellent performance, if others also had firebolts, wouldn't Harry's advantage be gone? Exclamation mark. However, when both sides had the same flying broom, Harry's firebolt was equipped with a magic thruster, which could make Harry's flying broom performance greatly different. This difference in equipment performance can even make up for many differences in flying technology. It's no wonder that Harry was so happy after seeing Lin En and Irina. Lin En and Irina walked into the black ancestral house, and after saying Merry Christmas to everyone, they discussed going to St. Mungo's Hospital for Magical Maladies and Injuries to visit Mr. Weasley. Mr. Weasley recovered well under the treatment of the therapist. If the problem caused by the snake venom had not been solved, Mr. Weasley might have been discharged from St. Mungo's Hospital for Magical Maladies and Injuries yesterday. However, Mrs. Weasley quarreled with Mr. Weasley after seeing him. The reason was that Mr. Weasley agreed to the plan given by the trainee therapist named Augustus Pye to suture Mr. Weasley's wound with muggle surgical sutures. Mrs. Weasley thought this plan was absurd, and Mr. Weasley's agreement to this plan was even more stupid. In fact, this method should have been very useful. The medical technology of the muggle world should not be underestimated even in the wizarding world. But the snake venom carried by Nagini dissolved the silk thread sewn on Mr. Weasley, which made this plan a complete failure. When Mr. and Mrs. Weasley were arguing, Harry and others didn't want to continue listening, so they left the ward under the pretext of going to the tea room on the 6th floor to get tea, and walked up a shaky staircase. However, when everyone arrived on the 5th floor, a figure behind a small window, marked with the Department of Spell Injury, attracted everyone's attention. A figure in a lavender robe pushed open the door of the ward. It was Lockhart, who had been hit by the Oblivion Curse after Lin revealed the truth and turned into a fool. Compared with the Lockhart in the original book whose memory was damaged by the rebound of his own spell, the Lockhart who was attacked by Lin looked even more stupid. Wabi wabi, wabi babu. 2.5 years had passed since the attack, but Lockhart seemed to have not recovered his normal language ability. He walked towards the crowd, saying something that no one could understand. Chapter 500, The Longbottom Family in the Permanent Ward. Harry and the others naturally recognized Lockhart's identity, and they looked at him with some caution. If Lin and Irina hadn't revealed Lockhart's true face, they would probably have thought that Lockhart was just an ordinary idiot professor by the end of the semester. Harry and the others didn't expect that Lockhart, who seemed to be a waste, had such attainments in the Oblivion spell, and even used it to steal the experience of many powerful wizards, and took it for himself. Even those powerful wizards were caught off guard and attacked by Lockhart. So what about these little wizards who never had any defense against professors? Exclamation mark. After seeing Lockhart's silly look and the appearance of being unable to speak a complete sentence, Harry and the others finally relaxed their vigilance a little. This guy really deserves it, Ron said with disgust. Harry and Hermione also nodded repeatedly. Just when Harry and the others were about to bypass Lockhart, another head popped out of the ward and called out, "Gilderoy, naughty boy, where have you been?" Lockhart, who had now lost his mind and turned into an idiot, was just a naughty child in the eyes of these conscientious therapists. Although these therapists also hated Lockhart's behavior, now he was just their patient. A therapist with a gold and silver garland on her head and a maternal aura hurried over from the ward. She grabbed Lockhart's arm and looked at him kindly, as if he was just a 2-year-old child. "Oh, are you here to visit Childeroy?" the therapist asked. Irina said, "Oh, we don't." But before Irina could finish her words, the healer hurriedly took Lockhart's hand and led him into the ward, saying, "That's great. You know, no one has ever visited him. Poor little lamb. Please come this way. He lives in a closed ward. He must have slipped out when I went in to get the gifts. The door is usually locked. Melon bless him. He doesn't know who he is. He doesn't remember how to come back after he left. It's great that you came to see him." The healer kept on talking, opened the door of the ward with the unlocking spell, and led him in. Seeing this, everyone looked at each other and finally chose to go in and find out what was going on. Lin En looked at the environment in the ward, and he thought and said, "If I remember correctly, this is the long-term ward of St. Mungo's Hospital for Magical Maladies and Injuries, and the patients here are all permanently injured by spells." Then, in addition to Lockhart, there seems to be. Irina seemed to have thought of it, but she didn't say much, but her expression became a little lost. At this time, after the therapist pressed Lockhart to the chair, he began to take care of the other patients in the ward. And everyone followed the therapist's actions and looked at the other patients in the ward. I saw a wizard with a sallow face and a sad face lying on the bed opposite Lockhart, staring at the ceiling and talking to himself as if he had no awareness of the surrounding things. There was a woman with long hair on her face between the two beds, and the two beds at the other end of the ward were surrounded by flower curtains to give the patients and visitors on the other side some privacy. "This is for you, and," the healer said cheerfully to the hairy-faced woman, handing her a small pile of Christmas presents. "See, you haven't been forgotten, have you? Your son sent an owl to say he'll come to see you tonight. That's nice, isn't it?" Anne's speech seemed to have been damaged by the spell, and she could only make a few barking noises. Then, the healer walked quickly to the man, who was talking to himself, placed a pot of strange and ugly plants on his bedside table, and used his wand to hang a calendar on the wall, with the long tentacles of the plants waving back and forth. The healer said gently to the patient who was talking to himself, "Broderick, look, someone has given you a pot of plants and a beautiful calendar with a different hippogriff for each month, which will put you in a good mood, right?" After that, the healer cast his eyes on the two beds, covered by the flower curtains, and said, "And, oh, Mrs. Longbottom, are you leaving now?" Hearing the healer's words, Harry, Ron and Hermione all turned their heads sharply. The flower curtain at the end of the ward had been drawn open, and two people walked out from the bedside. The two people were an old witch who looked very scary. She was wearing a green robe, a moth-eaten fox fur, and a pointed hat that was obviously decorated with a specimen of a vulture. Behind her was a boy who looked unhappy, and the identity of the boy was naturally familiar to them. Yes, the boy was Neville Longbottom. "Hello, Mrs. Longbottom." Lin walked up and greeted the old witch next to Neville, that is, Mrs. Longbottom, Neville's grandmother. At the beginning, when Lin and Irina were discussing the case of little Barty with Dumbledore, Dumbledore also took them to see the memory of the trial. After they killed little Barty, Mrs. Longbottom also met the two and thanked them sincerely. Therefore, Lin and Irina knew Mrs. Longbottom. "Hello, Lin, Irina, are they also your friends, Neville, dear?" Mrs. Longbottom said kindly, and her eyes turned to Harry and others. Neville looked at these friends who had been with him day and night, and his face turned purple. He didn't want his friends to appear here, just like he didn't want them to know about his parents. "Oh, right." Mrs. Longbottom stared at Harry and gently grabbed his hand. Yes, of course I know who you are. Neville thinks very highly of you. And you, the children of the Weasley family." Mrs. Longbottom naturally knew Ron and Ginny who came here. After greeting them, she turned her eyes to Hermione. What was surprising was that Mrs. Longbottom actually called out Hermione's name directly. "You must be Hermione Granger, right?" Hermione was also surprised and a little happy when she heard Mrs. Longbottom call out her name directly. She didn't expect Mrs. Longbottom to know her, and the only reason Mrs. Longbottom knew her was Neville. It can be seen that Neville truly regards her as a friend. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like, Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.